Dungeon Hunter. Chapters 141 to 160. Yi was armed with the jeweled crown, jeweled shield and the fairy knight's sword. They have already made it to the 14th floor. If the tree of origin is lost, then it is all over. We must defend it until Master comes back. The badly wounded Krasla spoke with a merciless expression. Fairy Nim, the enemies are well prepared. Not long ago, the Griffin in Gigantes was severely wounded. Chrisley also isn't safe. Tashmal, Mago and I. Can't you be quiet? We will defend it no matter what. Anything other than that won't be allowed. Yi will surely defend it. I know, but it isn't necessary for Fairy Nim to be here. Hasn't Fairy Nim already become the core? Fairy Nim's presence is essential for the dungeon core and the tree of origin. The demons were well prepared. The magic power of the dungeon was being twisted. An enormous amount of magic power was consumed from the tree of origin and dungeon core. The dungeon was collapsing. It was only continuing to be maintained thanks to Yi. However, it wouldn't be good if Yi was damaged. Do you want Yi to just suck my fingers and watch? This is all happening because of Yi. Me, Fairy Nim, Kurung, Kururung. It was at that moment. Noises indicating a large-scale movement could be heard from downstairs. The enemy is coming. Fairy Nim, please don't overdo it. Krasla was holding his red spear. There had been over 100 attacks in the past year. So far, the attacks had been blocked, but the enemy's offense was growing these days. They were able to hold on thanks to Tashmal, Mago, Krasla and some magic items from the Lich Gaparam. Krasla's thoughts didn't last long. My body is burning up. He needed to defend it. Despite his expectations, the dungeon master hadn't appeared for a long time. The severely injured Krasla turned around. Yi will defend it. I will be sure to keep it until Master comes back. Yi couldn't stay there quietly. The fully armed Yi bit her lips and flapped her wings. Duke de Pella, Marquis Anastasia, Earl Lemurin and Marquis Generald, 4 demons from Pandemonium's faction had gathered. They looked ahead of them with different expressions. Even if they were from the same faction, it was normally impossible for 4 demons to be gathered together. However, it was a different story if the problem was important. A fierce battle was going on in front of them. It might look even at first glance, but it was actually extremely tilted to one side. A handful of dark elves and angels were being overwhelmed by the 4 demons' creatures. Krasla, Mago, Tashmal, they were certainly strong, but they were wounded and exhausted. If a huge rock continued being hammered at, cracks would start showing up. Resistance is strong, so there must be something huge on the 15th floor. Marquis Anastasia cried out. All the forces remaining in the dungeon had been gathered to block them. It was the first large-scale resistance since the early days. Duke de Pella laughed. A last-ditch effort. The creatures are tired from blocking us for 1 year. Randolph Brigzeal, he had this much power hidden, so it would be difficult for Pandemonium Nim if he was still here. Pandemonium was a Grand Duke with a lot of knowledge. He had a solid knowledge and familiarity with magic. He devised a simple way to shock the magic power in the dungeon. Pandemonium was the one who figured out that the master of this dungeon was Randolph Brigzeal. Thanks to that, it was easy. The creatures with low intelligence lost control and the fairy was unable to make strategic movements. Even so, 1 year. Anastasia muttered with dislike. Last year, Randolph Brigzeal's death was confirmed at the auction. He never showed up. He was certainly involved in a battle with Okulos. In the process, Pandemonium identified Randolph Brigzeal's dungeon. There was no problem so far. The dungeon didn't have its owner. They could just grab it and eat. But the power left behind by Randolph Brigzeal was beyond imagination. The quality and numbers couldn't be gathered by a mere demon in just 3 years. It wasn't an issue to be taken lightly. The 4 demons rushed in. It had already been 1 year since they entered. They didn't want to imagine what would happen against the high-class creatures if it hadn't been for Pandemonium. They persisted for 1 year. Baduck. Anastasia gritted her teeth. 1 year. They only managed to reach the 14th floor in that time. Troops weren't able to be recruited without the owner of the dungeon. Yet they persisted desperately. It was completely frustrating. There were 15 floors remaining, but all the troops had been mobilized. It was a chance for victory. Now, they just needed to end it. Then de Pella said to Anastasia, I feel a presence from the 15th floor. It is similar to the World Tree but more intense. We need to bring it back for Pandemonium to confirm. What could they be hiding? Hoo-hoo. It was natural for the demons to wonder. There was something hidden on the 15th floor. Randolph Briggseal had shown strange behavior from the moment he first appeared. He had an overwhelming number of points that the other demons couldn't imitate. Okulos used a shortcut to imitate it, but he still fell short. The 4 demons thought the secret to Randolph Briggseal's points was on the 15th floor. Let's end this. A giant followed after Depella. Titan, a high-class 2LV creature. The entire body was covered with sharp armor. Gigantes was forced to kneel in front of the Titan. He was purchased at the last Demon World auction and his power was beyond expectations. He was perfect for piercing through the enemies. They won't last much longer. There were deep smiles on the faces of Depella and the other demons. A red spear flew through the air. Thud, the body lost its strength and fell to the ground. Krasla. He was an unyielding warrior who encountered countless enemies since the demons invaded the dungeon. He had never fallen, but was like a rock slowly being chipped away. After Chrisley was trapped by the enemies and suffered a critical injury, he drove himself even further. However, it was only up to here. I have to stand up. He placed his hands on the floor but couldn't gather any power. His back and shoulders were disabled due to some mistakes. As Krasla collapsed, a large number of creatures surrounded him. He was able to take down over 100 creatures alone, but he was immobile. I must defend it. Beyond where he collapsed was the path to the Tree of Origin. The Tree of Origin was the hope of the Dark Elves and a comfortable home. Chrisley, who was being treated there, would die. No, they barely found this place. This was a place where everyone could settle down and start fresh, so he promised to protect it. However, Dungeon Master had died. He managed to survive 1 year without Master, but a werewolf's teeth approached him. Krasla bit his lips, but his willpower couldn't transcend the limits of reality. It was at that moment. Yi flew forward with the Fairy Knight's sword. Light shone from the Fairy Knight's sword and had the power to chase away evil. The werewolf stepped back. The creatures couldn't approach easily. Fairy Nim, don't say anything else. Please protect Chrisley in this place. You can't die. Yi won't allow it. You can't. Yi stubbornly shook her head while using the jeweled shield. Then she burst into tears. Yi felt responsible for it. She blamed herself and felt regret every day. There will be no more losses. Don't die because of Yi's mistake. Master will come back, Hying. The momentum was good, but she couldn't help feeling fear. Her hands quivered as she used the sword to assault the creatures around her. The saber tigers, Tashmal and Mago, were fighting, but the Titan and demons irrevocably reversed the atmosphere. Tashmal? I had no idea that an angel had fallen. Randolph Briggseal, he would be a nuisance if he was alive. The leader of the 4 demons, Duke Depella, was playing with Tashmal. Soon, Tashmal fell to the ground. The massacre began. The rest of the demons put pressure on Mago, so the situation was the worst. Master, Yi was wrong. Yi closed her eyes. Everything happening around her was horrible. This was a punishment. It was natural to receive a punishment after sinning. Yi was wrong. But Yi wanted to see Master at least once. Even if he hated her, at least once. She begged and begged. She didn't know how much time passed. At that moment, there was a change in the surroundings. This is ridiculous. Randolph Briggseal. The demons were shocked. Finally, that name fell from someone's mouth. Quarurung. Lightning struck. Kwang. A huge explosion occurred. Kiek. Kua. Demons were screaming. That sound caused Yi to open her eyes. At the same time, Master. She couldn't believe it. A dream? Could it be an illusion created by her mind? No, it was fine if it was an illusion. Even if it was false, that was still fine. Master. Hying. Master. Yi flew over and wept. I raised wrath and the Emperor's sword. The demons and the creatures. They had invaded up to the 14th floor of my dungeon. I felt dirty. They didn't have permission to enter. This was my dungeon and they were thieves. Thieves had entered the house, so the owner couldn't stay still. Your Majesty, what should we do? Maxium asked. What should they do? The answer was clear. The unauthorized beings, kill them all. They coveted what was mine and it would cost them their lives. The other demons, they are my prey, I said curtly. There was no yielding. The familiar demons. They were my food. New Maxium. I will follow your majesty. I will do my best. Maxium and Oswin left. I held Wrath and the Emperor's sword, kicking off against the ground. The demons managed to confirm my presence, but it was too late. I had grown stronger. Dark sword. My swords were covered with darkness. Moonlight was laid down on top of that. It was a sophisticated and perfected technique. Due to my overwhelming growth, I was already standing on top of their heads. It was a dicey situation, but it wasn't too late. If it wasn't too late, then it would be simple to reverse the situation. KWA Ru Rung. Lightning God popped out. It immediately started to burn the enemies around me. Duke Depella, Marquis Anastasia, Earl Emurin, Marquis Generald. I repeated those 4 names as I stood in front of them. Randolph Brigzeal. Depella cried out incredulously as he saw me. I hadn't shown up in 1 year and 8 months, only to suddenly appear. They couldn't believe it. However, this was the reality. I had come here to kill them. Did you come back from the dead? It is already too late. You alone can't change anything. Depella closed his eyes and tried to relax. Randolph Brigzeal was back after a while. Even if he was an unusual demon, it was too late to reverse the situation by himself. It was impossible. You shouldn't have touched what was mine. However, my eyes blazed as I stared at Depella and the other demons. It would have been impossible before, but things had changed. Unlike before, I was becoming complete. I had set foot in the realm of transcendence. There was no possibility that they could go near me. I was completely confident. Your sins will be repaid with death. They could freely act for 1 year and 8 months. But that would change in the future. Return. I was back. What more did I need to say? The only thing left for them was ruin. Chapter 142 to 143. A worthy death. I didn't drag it out. I got rid of all restrictions. I opened my magic power and it caused a huge surge in the air around me. Dominance started to creep into the surroundings. The creatures in the area were instinctively frightened. This was the perception of my presence. It was similar to an area declaration. The high-class 2LV Titan. Even this formidable creature took a step back. He withdrew and took a defensive attitude towards me. The expressions of Depella and the other demons changed. They frowned and placed a hand on their weapons. I was already moving before they could prepare their defenses. They were completely lacking compared to the Grand Dukes. The reality couldn't be ignored. I had gained a few enlightenments in the underground world. I had grown rapidly and the rewards I got from there were at a terrifying level. Besides, this was my dungeon. As soon as I returned, the dungeon recognized me and started operating normally. In my dungeons, I was almost invincible. I pushed off against the ground while gripping Wrath and the Emperor's sword. I used Moonlight Falling and instantly appeared in front of Depella and the Titan. Even if it was only a short while, I couldn't tolerate their presence in my dungeon. I could get rid of them quickly, but it was still unpleasant. It was only acceptable if they were corpses. Quang. The Titan's lumbering body was hit by Wrath. The Titan was thrown back with a loud sound. His body slumped against the dungeon wall for a while. Kiu. The Titan speck on the wall got up with a shake of his head. He couldn't balance and staggered as he took one step. His spirit couldn't wake up from the sudden attack. There was a clear hole in the part of the armor that had been hit. Pride, I muttered. At that moment, black flames sprung up from my gloves and covered my entire body. The Wrath and Sloth skills raised and lowered my stats, but Pride was different. Pride's flames. Once they hit the enemy, the flames wouldn't stop until the opponent died. Of course, intelligence needed to be high for the skill to have this effect. I already had 1 foot in the transcendent realm. The flames at this level couldn't be avoided. Waruruk. I stretched out my hand and Pride's flames reached the Titan. Kiak. The Titan was directly hit by the fire and groaned in pain. The flames penetrated the armor and spread all over the body. Seductive kiss. Depella took the time when I was distracted by the Titan to attack me. Hundreds of mouths floated around me, unleashing a specific pheromone designed for bewitchment. But I was covered with Pride's flames. The skill was unable to touch me. Twilight Whip. Whips emerged from the mouths and started swinging. It was a bizarre sight and annoying for me. Paysak. Wrath itself was a strong weapon, but it was overpowered with the combination of Dark Sword and Moonlight Falling. It was possible to break everything that existed in this world. There was no reason not to use the skills against Depella. The whips were cut off and couldn't be used again. Depella watched this process and opened his mouth. The power of that sword. What is your relationship with Ariel Diablo? Don't compare me with her. Ariel Diablo's abyss sword and my dark sword were similar. However, hearing the comparison didn't feel that good. It was something that I purchased from the achievements store. All the whips around me were cut off and then I assaulted Depella. The moonlight from High and Moon's sword technique shone even in the dark dungeon. The magic of the moonlight eroded away Depella's magic power. Depella was baffled. Seductive Kiss and Twilight Whip didn't produce the results he desired. Originally it was normal to have hundreds of lips and whips. However, the ones that I cut didn't recover. It was due to the magic power itself being severed. Randolph Brigzeal, whom Depella gathered his remaining magic power into his lungs. I knew exactly what skill was being used. It was Duke Depella's patented skill, Breath of Darkness. Kwang. A dark cloud poured from Depella's mouth. It flew towards me while corroding everything it touched. I recalled Lightning God. Electricity and Pride's flames shot towards it. The two forces combined and collided with Breath of Darkness. Huang. The dungeon shook. My flames smashing against Breath of Darkness caused a flare. It was only for a moment. This is ridiculous. How could he dream that his skill would be broken? Breath of Darkness was eaten by my flames. It couldn't resist and eventually gave way. In the end, Depella was in its path. Quajijijik. The flames swallowed up Depella. The flames and lightning god wiped out Depella without leaving a single piece behind. He evaporated like there was nothing there in the first place. The other demons hesitated and took a step back. Such a thing? Isn't he just an earl? That power, I can't believe it. The Titan was blown apart and even Depella wasn't a match. It wasn't easy for them to accept. The most powerful one among them, Depella, had been defeated. They realized that I was a lot different from the Randolph Brigzeal they knew. The power I showed at the Demon World auction was only my points and high-class creature. This was the first time I demonstrated my combat capabilities directly. It was a pity, but it was impossible for me to show generosity. It was the same for any demon. Weak people weren't wanted. They deserved to die. Waruruk. Pride's flames burned even stronger. Oswin and Maxium approached me while covered in blood. New Maxium. I have punished the enemies in the name of your majesty. New Oswin. It was the same for me. Maxium desperately accepted my words, but Oswin had strong principles. In the first place, he hated the Hell Monarch. As long as I walked a different path from the Hell Monarch, Oswin would follow me. He let me know it. Despite having 4 arms cut off, I brought Oswin along because his knowledge would be a useful thing. However, I wasn't paying attention to Oswin and Maxium. My eyes were fixed on one point. Dungeon Master? Krasla. He stared at me with one hand on his red spear. But there was no focus in his eyes. He lost his eyesight. His injuries were serious. His health was in a state of great deterioration. In other words, his life force was being gnawed at. It wasn't just 1 or 2 times, but dozens of times. It was amazing that he even survived this long. I'm too late. In this state, he wouldn't be able to live, even with an elixir. Really, Dungeon Master? Strange. It seems like I can't see. That's right. Krasla smiled. He had to understand that he would die soon. Even so, Krasla still laughed. It was a fact that I had returned. I recalled the first time I met Krasla. He had been trapped in a cage, and shortly after entering the dungeon, I had punished both him and the Dark Elves. Krasla was the one who most passionately imitated a dog. His sister Chrisley became queen and his warrior's pride was revived. He swore his loyalty to me after Chrisley survived due to the ceremony. He followed me and was never a disappointment. Please? Krasla painfully opened his mouth. His words couldn't come out correctly. Most of his energy had been lost. However, I knew what Krasla wanted to say. Krasla, you are weak and about to die. My words were heartless. On the surface, I seemed to have a blasé attitude. Krasla closed his eyes. His life would wane in a few seconds. I was sure that he would completely stop breathing in a minute. So, I said what Krasla wanted to. I will make Chrisley stronger than anyone else. She will never die like you. Duck. Krasla's hands flopped down without any strength. His heart wasn't beating anymore. The flowing blood cooled quickly. However, the smile on his face didn't change. He was reassured by my words. I had been missing for 1 year and 8 months, yet he still blindly believed me. Hying, sniffle. Yi's head was down as she wiped away the continuously flowing tears. Her expression showed her sincere sorrow and regret for the dead. I was still looking down at Krasla. He died without strength, but his death wasn't worthless. I had that thought and finally turned away. Bury his body next to the tree of origin. I will be checking the top floor. The dead creatures were buried near the tree of origin. The process didn't last long. It was natural for creatures to die. It was better to plan for tomorrow instead of dwelling on grief. In order to do so, I needed to figure out the overall situation of the dungeon. There is almost nothing left. Curse words automatically rose. The creatures had dried up. It was comforting that most of the major ones were well. Although many of them were injured and couldn't move, they hadn't lost their source of health like Krasla had. Treatment was still possible. The China and Japan dungeons are safe. I confirmed it through the connection to South Korea's dungeon. They didn't seem to be attacked like the South Korean dungeon. It seemed like Pandemonium hadn't noticed them. I examined the status of my dungeon. In order to normalize the dungeon, I'll need to repair what had broken. The most urgent problem was the breeding species. I had built them up over 3 years, so an astronomical number of points was required for restoration. I got a huge number of points after escaping the underground world. I received numerous achievements. I realized that I hadn't checked everything. I decided to use this opportunity to figure out what had changed. Points 38,799,344. Current achievement points 29,158. The points and achievement points were satisfactory. I would be able to make a dungeon stronger than before. In addition, the treasures of the underground world were added to the achievements store. I would use the achievement points so that such a thing wouldn't happen again. Status window. Soon my status window emerged in the air. Name: Randolph Briggseel. Occupation: Demon Earl. Dungeon Master. Title: * Dungeon Hunter. Residual stats +1 when occupying dungeons and hunting demons. * Indomitable Warrior. XU. All stats +2. * First to receive a fairy's blessing. U. Magic power +6. * Origin Master. Epic. All stats +3. * Undead. XU. Intelligence and Stamina +5. * Ruler of the Underground World. Legend. All stats +5. The rating of all skills below epic grade +0.5. Stats: Strength 85, +20, Intelligence 90, +15. Agility 80, +20, Stamina 85, +22. Magic Power 94, +16. Potential: 434 + 93 550ths. Remaining stat points: 13. Electric Power, 21 gigawatts. Uniqueness: the Master of the Underground World. The heart of the Hell Monarch has completely awakened. Skill: Combine Everything, XU. Mind's Eye, Epic. Dark Sword, Epic. Divine Sword Unity, Epic. Passive: Lightning Elemental, Epic. Pride, Epic. Corruption, X Epic. Skill and item effects: Wrath, Strength +7, Sloth, Agility +7, Pride, Stamina +7. Divine Sword Unity, Strength and Agility +3. Before and after comparison: Strength 96, Intelligence 93, Agility 86, Stamina 85, Magic 98, Potential 412 + 51 500ths. Strength 105, Intelligence 105, Agility 100, Stamina 107, Magic 110, Potential 434 + 93 550ths. It was an amazing growth. All my pure stats and calibrated stats had risen significantly. Above all, my potential limit had risen by 50. These were very tangible things. By default, demons had a potential of 500 points. But normally, only the dukes and grand dukes managed to reach this limit. I had escaped that base value. It meant that my limit was different from others and I had room to grow beyond 500 points. Besides, if I added the calibrated stats, then it already exceeded 500. A total of 527 stat points. I had used the basis of 500 points as the standard for transcendence, and now I had dipped a foot in that realm. I wouldn't be lacking at all when going against the Grand Dukes. My total stats were similar to the Dark Spirit King Adonis. However, I had surpassed the limits while he was still looking for a way. He was stagnant while I could continue to advance. A legend ranked title. My eyes looked at Ruler of the Underground World, Legend. Something legend ranked couldn't be obtained just from being strong. I thought it would take at least 5 more years to even have a chance to obtain it. My decisions in the underground world were perfect. If I hadn't gone there and broken my limits, then it was unlikely that I would win this war, even with my past knowledge. My skill ratings have also increased. It was due to a title. It increased the rating of all skills under epic grade by 0.5. The most gratifying thing was that Mind's Eye became epic grade. Now a similar incident to the one with Okulos wouldn't be repeated. Divine Sword Unity enhanced the completeness of my sword techniques while the cutting edge of Dark Sword was sharpened. If I combined Dark Sword and Moonlight Falling with Wrath, it seemed to be able to match Ariel Diablo's Abyss Sword. In a true sense, I had become their opponent. No, I became a hunter. A hunter that beasts crawling on the ground would have to fear. Achievements Store. As those words fell from my mouth, the dungeon core glowed more intensely. Welcome to the Achievements Store. Current achievement points 29,151. Achievement points can be used to purchase goods from the store. Item names marked with a plus are only available for purchase once. Items from the Treasure Trove of the Hell Monarch have been added. Intervention complete. Additional items can be found in the Achievement-related items column. Hell Monarch. He made the underground world. The system wasn't recognized in that created world. And I obtained the Treasure Trove. What was hidden in there? The commanders had betrayed the Hell Monarch because of how great the items were. I moved my gaze to the window that popped up. Additional achievement-related items. Angel Egg 500. Phantom Cavalry 300. Ghost Archer 400. Ghost Mage Soldier 1200. Plus 1000 Wings, Epic, 5000. Plus Roaring Shield, Epic, 6800. Plus Absolute Ice Crystal, X Epic, 23,000. Plus Hell Puppet 10,000. Plus Mountain Sign 15,000. Plus Doom Dragon 60,000. Plus Advanced Training Room, 5/5, 8,000. Plus Utopia, Legend, 99,555. Plus Orb of Destruction, Legend, 99,555. The list was long. I couldn't confirm everything with one glance. Among them, there were 10 important things. Originally, Aogen was the one with the most expensive price in the Achievements Store. Now more expensive things existed. Doom Dragon, Utopia and Orb of Destruction. They were names I never heard of, but I couldn't simply ignore them. Doom Dragon was the first species while the other two had a legend rating. Legend grade items were very rare in my previous life. As far as I knew, there had been only 3 items. Just one could unleash incredible havoc and reverse the game. In particular, the human camp broke the defenses of a Grand Duke using the Celestial Wand. Of course, the user was one of the 10 strongest humans, but that strength was amazing. All of this, it is enough to call someone a god. Hell Monarch. The more I thought about it, he really was an unknown person. He entered the transcendent realm and climbed to a position close to a god. He wasn't actually a god, but he had enough strength to be one. He lost the gamble and that power was now mine. Using it properly could allow me to gain the upper hand. I would be able to purchase a decent item with my current achievement points. It is enough to check it. I nodded. I identified what was possible and what wasn't with my current points and achievements. The budget was sufficient to restore my forces. It was overflowing. With a little more time, I would be able to make my dungeons strong. My dungeon was safe despite being damaged. It was enough. The creatures were worthy of praise for holding out so long against the demons. As long as I was back, I wouldn't tolerate another incident like this. I shut down domestic mode. After that, I left the top floor and found Chrisley. Chrisley was in a serious condition. She was lying alone in a treehouse with a pale face and closed eyes. I grabbed Chrisley's wrists and experienced some backlash as I poured my magic power into her. This was the first time. It meant the body was instinctively protecting itself from external intervention. At first glance, her source of life was quite compromised like Krasla's. There was a serious problem with her twisted-up magic power. Yi, since when has Chrisley been in this state? I calmly spoke to Yi, who was quietly watching me from the door. Yes, master. Exactly 58 days. Yi remembers it clearly. She was taken by a surprise attack while trying to save the Dwarf King. 58 days. It is dangerous. There was a big difference between hearing and seeing it directly. If it was just a bodily injury, then it could be healed with an elixir. But at this level, I would have to apply some force. Her insides were being overwhelmed with magic power. She was able to live due to her good blood. The pure blood of the true demonic dragon Aogen and the dark elf was trying hard to restore Chrisley's body to normal. There were few treatments for magic power running wild. The established theory was that death was inevitable. It wasn't quite twisted, but the magic power was being squeezed by a force. It was a type of incurable disease. There was no precedent for treatment, but there were some methods. More than anything, it couldn't be solved alone. Outside help was needed, and the outsider helping was also risking their lives. In the meantime, she was likely to die. If she was lucky enough to live, she might be disabled for the rest of her life. Interfering with magic power wasn't an easy feat. This was the case. Her magic power is warping. She has been in this state for 58 days. It is probably too late for me to interfere. Her magic power would keep twisting until she died. It took an average of 7 days. Yet she managed to survive for 58 days? It was quite remarkable. A great thing. No one would ever mention a cure. The most likely person was Pandemonium. He was familiar with magic and would have done research on magic power. I had done similar actions a few times, but I had never actually solved the problem of twisted magic power. For example, I had corrected the flow of electricity for Yuun Hai. I started frowning. It was true that she had helped me a lot, but Chrisley was just one of many subordinates. Usually I would have abandoned her. However, Krasla's death saved you. Thank his worthy death. I placed my hands on her wrist. And I ordered Yi, never, absolutely never let anyone enter until I come out. Yi, this goes for you as well. I understand, master. Yi will stand guard here. Yi. Yi gave a small laugh and flew away. She closed the door and stood outside it like a dead mouse. All the wind and sound was cut off. Then, I took a deep breath. I stripped off her clothes and firmly grabbed her breasts. I found her heart with my palm and closed my eyes. My magic power already exceeded Chrisley's. However, the blood of the true demonic dragon and dark elf had a strong magic power that was equal to mine. It was a difficult task to get in between the twisted strands to unwind them. It was like defusing a bomb. I couldn't be safe as this had been happening inside Chrisley's body for 58 days. Willpower is important. DOK. I talked to Chrisley as I tapped on her magic power. At first I was ignored, but a reaction occurred as I constantly knocked. The weak reaction quickly disappeared. It was just for 0.1 second, but I walked the realm of transcendence and could react. I detoured to the place where the magic power reacted, and I once again knocked on the door. This behavior was repeated many times. Wake up. The reaction was a little bit stronger. Talk. I knocked even harder. Leave everything to me. The tangled magic power inside the body shook tremendously. I didn't know if Chrisley's spirit had woken up, but I couldn't help believing. I found one loose strand of magic power. After that, I identified the overall context. Then I grabbed one thread and unraveled it carefully. Chrisley's magic power no longer tried interfering. I didn't know if the body was instinctively reacting to my actions or if it was Chrisley's will, but I was glad. There was no more need to be reluctant. My work was spurred on. At that moment, I discovered another type of magic power. Ganak, the king of death. His essence was still remaining inside her body? While fighting Okulos, Chrisley had borrowed Ganak's strength through his essence. I thought it was a one-time thing, but his power remained inside and was interfering with the magic flow. This was the cause. It wouldn't have been such a big deal without Ganak's essence interfering. I stood at the crossroads of choice. I needed to either remove it or search for another direction. But it was already too late. The threads were so badly entangled that it wouldn't be easy to find a way. It was irreversible, so I needed to find another road. Getting rid of Ganak's essence would be a waste. I made a third choice. I would dissolve it. Ganak's essence would be melted into Chrisley's magic power. It would be more difficult than loosening the strands. Ganak's power wasn't Chrisley's power. However, I had absorbed power once, so I knew it wasn't impossible. Of course, the danger would double for both Chrisley and I. It would double, but I will make you stronger. Krasla died due to a lack of power. So I asked for power. I said I would take care of Chrisley. Krasla's death made her worth it. His defense of the dungeon moved me. For his sake, I would venture to do this. Endure. Kuuong. There was an explosion of magic power inside Chrisley. Chapter 144. Advanced Training Room. Sunlight came in through the window as Chrisley opened her eyes. I dreamed of my childhood. A very long dream. Her memories of the time she played on barren land under the protection of adults had passed through her head like a dream. Then someone called her while she was immersed in the sweet dream. Wake up. Those words were constantly repeated. If it wasn't for that voice, then she wouldn't have woken up. After opening her eyes, the first thing she saw was the wooden ceiling. Her whole body was screaming as she stretched out. It seemed like she had been laid down for quite a while. Chrisley remembered collapsing. She was trapped by the enemy while trying to save the Dwarf King, and her magic power surged. But where was this place? It was familiar. A home in the Dark Elf village. Chrisley immediately adapted to reality and accepted that she was alive. Get up. She got up with great difficulty. She knew she would have died from her magic power running wild. However, she somehow got another chance. The demons had entered the dungeon. They were constantly attacking. Many creatures would have died while she was lying down. She needed to quickly return to the dungeon. Chrisley barely managed to get up despite the pain. She changed her clothes and thought about Okulos. That can't be repeated. Chrisley had returned without Dungeon Master. She hid from the enemies for over 3 months while waiting for Dungeon Master to return. However, Pandemonium started attacking and she had no choice but to return. I have to protect it even if my body is burned up. The dungeon couldn't be lost. She had to defend it. She would surely protect it. She formed fists as she thought this. Kuu. A dark smoke emerged from her fists. It spread and started to corrode everything. The bed and everything else that was wooden. They crumbled and turned into black powder. Kawong. It took only 30 seconds for the small house to collapse. But Chrisley was unharmed. Things like falling planks of wood were all broken before they reached Chrisley. They were also blocked by the black smoke coming from her body. What is this? Chrisley was baffled as she stood in the center of the collapsed house. Breeding species. In order to configure my dungeon, it was necessary to spread out the breeding species. It was a method of obtaining enormous benefits with fewer points, and a large number of creatures was indispensable to winning this game. There were many cases where the breeding species would produce multiple stronger offspring. I needed to mix them approximately in order to dominate the second half. But this invasion had killed most of the breeding species. They needed to be restored and reinforced. A floor master is needed. An intermediate boss should be responsible for each floor. Originally I thought a floor master wasn't needed. The final evolution of the species, for example, a special existence such as an orc lord, was possible. My thoughts had changed in the meantime. If I was absent, then there was a limit to how much Chrisley and Yihi could do alone. It was more efficient to use floor masters to direct the strategy for each floor. If the floor master was associated with the representative breeding species, then they would understand the characteristics of the species, allowing them to unite more easily against an enemy's invasion. It will take approximately 12 million points to restore the dungeon. Summoning a floor master for all floors, it would take a month for the dungeon to return to normal. This was possible due to the features of the tree or origin. After getting rid of the enemy, I restored the original functioning of the dungeon core and tree of origin. During this month, Pandemonium was unlikely to show any movements. He wouldn't take action because he had lost 4 demons at once. I have to make as much as possible during this month. I nodded, but I was still provoked. This dungeon was still standing despite my absence. Pandemonium had some idea of my skills. Otherwise he wouldn't have mobilized 4 demons to raid this place. 10 days passed. Pandemonium would have started wondering after losing contact with his demons. No matter how strong I was, I couldn't deal with all of Pandemonium's faction alone. So, I had to buy some time. Time for my dungeon to recover. Master. Yi was hurriedly flying towards me. She had been acting cautiously since I returned. Questions such as, "Would you like honey water?" or "Would you like a shoulder rub?" were asked in a mature tone different from before. "What's going on, Chrisley?" Pant pant. Yi took deep breaths before talking. "It is breaking them. Everything is being broken." Yi tried to stop it, but she can't control it. "It seems like Ganak's essence is causing trouble." Indeed, I was convinced. It was expected. I had successfully melted Ganak's essence into Chrisley's magic power. It was sweaty work, but the effect was amazing. The quality and quantity of her magic power had grown rapidly. Naturally, it would be hard to control. I nodded and turned. "Guide me to where Chrisley is." "Yes, master," Yi replied with a fairly polite posture. Her hands were folded on her belly as she started to gently guide me. She looked just like a maid, so I couldn't help laughing. Kwa ru rung. The inner wall of the dungeon was falling. The ground was split and the wind was so wild that it was difficult to get near. There was an empty circle hundreds of meters around Chrisley. "Queen Nim, please." Julium, the representative of the Dark Elves, came forward. He didn't know how to respond to what was happening in the center of the village. "I can't stop it." The smoke that rose from her body caused death. It mercilessly corroded everything around it. She tried to reduce the damage by not moving. However, the energy was becoming stronger and it was completely out of Chrisley's control. "Please just wait a moment. Fairy Nim has gone to call the dungeon master." Julium shouted from hundreds of meters outside the collapsing village. Then Chrisley's eyes widened. "Huh, what do you mean? Dungeon master?" He came back. Dungeon master cured Queen Nim. While she was lying down, he had come back. It was unbelievable. At the same time, it became difficult for her to control her emotions. Kuu. Her aura became more intense and the range increased. If this continued, then the tree of origin would be affected. "Hiya, Queen Nim." Julium screamed with fright while Chrisley was upset. She couldn't even feel the joy of the news. "What should I do?" She bit her lips and asked Julium. She couldn't cheer the reality. She was afraid of what Dungeon Master would say when he saw her like this. Kawa, ah. But Julium's fears regarding Chrisley didn't occur. From a distance, flames started to eat away at the black smoke. Pride's flames. I deployed them in order to eat as much of that destructive smoke as possible. Pride had similar tendencies to me. It wouldn't tolerate anything entering its domain without permission. The flames had high attributes, so they wouldn't lost against the smoke. "My dungeon master, don't come any closer," Chrisley shouted louder. In the midst of her joy, she was worried that the uncontrollable aura would eat me. But I just slowly walked forward. Ganak's essence. I had a little bit of understanding after experiencing it. Time. Garnak, the king of death. The true power he used was time. He could speed up time and cause corrosion. My prideful flames refused to be fast-forwarded by time. It was blocked. "It has been a while," I said as I stood in front of Chrisley. Chrisley painfully opened her mouth. "My dungeon master?" Her eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Her feeling of regret was the strongest. She seemed to have blamed herself after I disappeared in the battle against Okulos. "Go to sleep. When you wake up, take steps to control your power. Duck." I placed my hands on Chrisley's forehead. Then Chrisley closed her eyes and slumped down. After that happened, Chrisley became moderately stable. But I didn't know when Ganak's power would emerge again. I had to take action before that. Therefore, I went into the achievements store and bought one item. It was a parchment-style contract that had various languages on it. I confirmed it with mind's eye. Name: Advanced Training Room, 5/5. Description: the user will be moved to a place where training can be done in earnest. Time and spirit can be used to balance the body. It won't have any effect on those on the way to completion, but it is possible to see a sizable effect for those in a transition period. Asterisk can be used a total of 5 times. Asterisk, please note, time in the room will move 100 times slower. Asterisk, entrance isn't allowed if the total stat points exceeds 450. Asterisk, there will be hidden compensation in accordance to the clear time. It was an ideal place to train Chrisley. In addition, I was very curious about the hidden compensation. I wasn't allowed to enter, but it would be good for Chrisley. I called Chrisley as soon as it happened. Tashmal, I didn't call you. Tashmal arrived with Chrisley. She was a fallen angel with 6 pairs of wings. She was a major contributor to defending the dungeon. However, I had only called Chrisley. I didn't know why Tashmil had followed. I know, but I need to be strong. Did you hear from Chrisley? She told me that it would teach her how to control her magic power. However, Dungeon Master, haven't you stepped into the transcendent realm? If you tell me the secret to transcendence, then it will help me become stronger. I never said anything, but Tashmil seemed to have noticed. I quietly shut my mouth as Tashmil continued. Angels have come down all over the world. Although I have fallen, I want to defeat the demons before they are all sacrificed. I have protected your dungeon for 1 year and 8 months, so I think I qualify. Tashmil had originally promised to end me. While I was gone, she had helped protect the dungeon for 1 year and 8 months. The influence of the dungeon core had weakened, so she could have escaped outside to the angels. Okay, I will allow it. I coolly accepted it. Her qualifications were sufficient. The parchment had been split into 5 pieces. I ripped 2 pieces and a large door was made. Go inside. Then Chrisley will be able to gain stability and Tashmil strength. I didn't know how much they would grow. However, this was from the Hell Monarch's treasure trove. It was enough to give it an entirely different feeling. There was no need for doubts. Something from the treasure trove definitely wouldn't be ordinary. Soon Chrisley nodded. Her eyes were red-rimmed and looked sad. I quickly figured out the reason. She knows that Krasla is dead. It seemed that someone had told her the truth. Yet it was evident that Chrisley had become more determined. Chrisley entered the room with strong fists. Tashmil entered next to her. The door closed with a loud sound. Then, I quietly stared before turning around. Now it was time to take advantage of the next month. Chapter 145 to 146. Rose. The thing I needed most was information. I needed a clear understanding of what I missed in the world. The dynamics of power. It wasn't possible to move without knowing the movements of the demons, angels and humans. And the Lich Gaparam was the best person to ask about this. Gaparam, I remembered. He was a lich researching life. Wasn't his goal to create a complete homunculus? I am fulfilling the promise, despite being late. It's okay. It isn't involving the homunculus, but I've made my own progress. Building a workshop. I promised to provide support so that he could continue his study into the homunculus. However, I had unintentionally spent 1 year and 8 months in the underground world. Points weren't available, so he couldn't do his research. Even so, Gaparam wasn't upset. He understood and didn't seem to care. I turned my gaze to the 2 children next to Gaparam. These children? I have been teaching the children these days. They are bright and their learning speed is amazing. Now, shouldn't you introduce yourselves? Dark skin and pointy ears. The 2 children were dark elves, approximately 4 or 5 years old. It was unusual that they were twins, but they looked familiar. Among them, the girl walked out first and bowed. Hello, Dungeon Master. My name is Rose. I heard that Dungeon Master gave me the name Rose. It is an honor. I am Roy. Unlike Rose, Roy had a timid nature. They are already so big. Now I could remember the 2 children. Not long after the children were born, I had named them. I had roughly named them, but now it felt different. Rose looked up at me with wide eyes. Queen Nim asked us to look after Dungeon Master if there are any problems. Rose is still young, but I want to learn quickly to be helpful to Dungeon Master. Me too. I gave a small laugh. The little girl was saying funny things. In particular, I liked Rose's unyielding eyes. I expected that she would be a confident heroine once she was older. It is brilliant. Correct. These children only have each other and are learning faster than others. The children will be a lot of help in my research. Roy's character is a little bit timid, but can't that be gradually fixed? In the 3rd Demon World auction, I had purchased a skill book called Twins Mental Rapport. I was convinced after checking the 2 children with mind's eye. It was obvious that the skill had been successfully learnt, causing a rise in their abilities. Gaparam, I heard that you could help me. How can you help? It was the reason I came to talk to him. When I asked seriously, Gaparam handed me a thick book. First, please take this. It is a book where I noted down my past work and my thoughts. You should be able to fill some of the gaps with it. I opened the book and saw things like daily changes, things that happened in the dungeon and external exploration. Even details about the weather were written down. Gaparam said with a warm smile, I am a researcher. I like to keep a record of everything. It isn't just limited to the dungeon, as this place called Earth is also very interesting. There isn't a fixed topic, but it should be enough to fill in the gaps for you. It will help. This much information. It seemed like it would take a few days to finish reading. I was scanning through the book when Gaparam quietly muttered, "And, do you remember M3? The artificial golem I purchased at the Demon World auction?" I turned and answered, "He was the completed version of M1 and M2. The name was a golem, but he looked more like an artificial knight." Of course I remembered him. However, I didn't know why that name would be mentioned right now. He didn't suffer a severe wound like the other high-class creatures. Gaparam sensed my confusion and continued, "I have been repairing and improving him every time he is broken." Talk. He clapped and a silver knight with red eyes emerged. However, he was covered with soot. There was a crack that seemed to be forcibly created and one finger couldn't be seen. Huh. I clicked my tongue. It was surprising that he hadn't been broken by now. There are many scars. Many enemies have tried to break it, but I managed to get it out alive. As a result, it has become much stronger. It is because I have transformed it according to the many battles. Transformed? I fixed the core of M3. I used a little bit of the knowledge of humans. Connecting multiple nuclei would allow for more power. I touched my jaw. Gaparam's story was very interesting. There were certainly some great parts about the technology of humans. However, I never thought about taking advantage of it. There was no need to bother, but now Gaparam had tampered with that technology. I won't tell you a complicated story. I created 4 nuclear fusion cores and connected them to make him move more efficiently. Roy and Rose were very helpful here. I connected their telepathy skill to M3's core, so M3 itself started to grow. M3 had been completed. There was no room for further growth. It was mentioned in his description. It meant the framework had been cracked. I turned my head and looked at M3. I quickly opened mind's eye. Name: M3. Stats: Strength 92, +5, Intelligence 0, +4-1. Agility 91, +5, Stamina 84, +5. Magic Power 85, +5. Potential: 352 + 61 340ths. Uniqueness: completed from the beginning. There is no more need for growth and there is no sense of self since its intelligence is 0. But the golem gives its best performance under a powerful master. There are more improvements since M1 and M2. *** 4 nuclear fusion cores. The Lich Gaparam has made M3 more efficient to use. Skill: Gale, XU, Joint Attack, XU, Roy and Rose, XU. There was a hidden option and the pure stat points had changed a little bit. Furthermore, another skill called Roy and Rose, XU, was created. A change. I never thought this would be possible. Even I was forced to be surprised. It is more combination than strengthening. He is transformed with pure technology. In the uniqueness, it had even written that M3 was complete. Something useful might emerge if Oswin, Gaparam and the Dwarf King worked together. It was natural to feel such curiosity. I couldn't imagine what would be created if those 3 joined forces. Roy and Rose can move M3. It will be a lot of help in battle. I remembered seeing him before. While I was fighting the Titan and 4 demons, I had seen a silver armor moving. Roy and Rose had controlled him. I looked at them with surprise. Rose had a sassy stance while Roy's head was bowed with shame. Was this also part of the research? It is similar. If I have the right equipment and workshop, then I can make it more neatly. Okay, then I will invest 3 million points. Gaparam flinched. He knew the weight of 3 million points. He had no help for 1 year and 8 months, so this excited him. Really? 3 million points? Of course, it wasn't just an investment. Instead, you should work with Oswin and the Dwarf King. Help each other out. Gaparam snorted. If it is the Dwarf King, then of course I will welcome the help. His dexterity will definitely be useful. But this is the first time I've heard of the name Oswin. The Twilight Blacksmith Oswin. You've never heard of him? I don't know. I've never heard his name while researching in the mountains. If so, he can't be that great. It was natural not to know, despite how famous Oswin was. Oswin was originally a human. They moved in completely different areas. It will surely be helpful if you work together. I am to complete the research together with Dungeon Master's subordinate. He agreed in a patronizing manner. I would see whether he maintained this attitude. I will leave the permission for the points to Yihi. Speak to Yihi if you need anything. I understand. You won't regret it. Gaparam briefly bowed his head. As I turned away, Gaparam hurriedly said, "Oh, I will leave my assistants. I won't be able to teach them while building the warehouse. The children are really excited about seeing Dungeon Master. Maybe you can take them along on a small errand. They can also help you by manipulating M3. Gaparam, I hadn't spent that long with him, so he didn't know me well. In particular, Rose was looking at me with shining eyes. Knowing how to control M3 would be helpful. They were young, but I didn't think they would be useless. Dark Elf Lords. They have the makings of a floor master. I recalled that the potential of the two children was very good. As expected, I checked with Mind's Eye and they had grown well. If I helped them a little bit, then they would grow into powerful creatures in the future. Leave them behind. I spoke curtly. I will immediately begin building the workshop. Then, Gaparam politely said before leaving. However, the two children didn't easily move. Follow me. Yes, Rose responded with a laugh. Roy, he answered in a small voice and followed behind me. There was a huge amount of content in the book Gaparam handed over. It was neatly arranged by date, so the information entered my head well. The short summary was something like this. April 5th. Pandemonium noticed the dungeon and his faction started the offensive. He had left a watcher around Okuyo's dungeon. We will likely have to retreat. April 9th. The second battle. It was safely blocked. The demons have entirely surrounded South Korea. Their movements have been blocked many times. May 18th. The human counterattack has begun. The attacks of the demons have slowed. The humans called Awakened, who joined together in guilds, have declared war against the demons. August 23rd. Road. South Korea's capital, Seoul, was taken. The supply station has been formed and the demons are carrying out the full-scale dungeon invasion. December 31st. Street. Tens of thousands of angels have descended all over the world. Archangels are confirmed to be present. The demons, including Ariel Diablo, left their dungeons and announced their existence to the world. South Korea is still being devastated by 4 demons and the 7th floor of the dungeon has been breached. July 3rd. Road. A small number of human awakened are being treated as points livestock by the demons. They would force the humans to grow, earning more points that would allow them to summon powerful creatures. The angels have attacked the dungeons. On this day, the 12th floor of this dungeon was breached. This was the information contained in the book. It was written with blood onto flesh. Based on this, I was able to get some idea of the circumstances. I didn't move for more than half a day. Once I set down the book, I noticed Rose sitting on her knees. Roy was rubbing his feet with a red face. What are you looking at? I was watching Dungeon Master. The answer naturally came from Rose. It wasn't the end to Rose's words. I want to know about Dungeon Master. Her expression was so intense that it was burdensome. It seemed like she had heard a lot of stories about me. She wanted to know about me. She truly was very smart. On the other hand, Roy's expression seemed to be the opposite of her words. If they heard about me, they would know how resolute I was. He was worried about Rose making a mistake with her words and being punished. I didn't care as long as they wouldn't rebel against me. And, I was going to raise them both as floor masters anyway. I stood up and said, I will leave the dungeon. Make preparations and follow me. Near Seoul. 50 awakened searched around with resolute determination. The slightest negligence was dangerous, so they couldn't breathe easily. A place that had been a huge city 1 year ago was already in ruins. Skulls were scattered all over the place as crows cried out. The cracked asphalt roads, abandoned cars and broken windows. It was a place with no life. Only the sounds of death could be heard. Stop. The awakened in the front raised a hand. The 50 people simultaneously stopped. The captain was called Jin Woo Ram. His team was scouting around Seoul for a mission. Jin Woo Ram confirmed the footprints on the ground and spoke. 4 days ago, massive creatures started moving in this direction. The footprints of trolls and a few ogres seem to be mixed together. In the east to west direction. The estimated number is 500. Gulp. All of the team members were nervous. There were only 50 awakened here. However, There were 500 intermediate trolls and advanced ogres. No matter how many elites were gathered here, it was impossible to defeat so many creatures. It would just be a massacre. Do you intend to follow? One of the team members asked. It was reckless. Common sense made it clear that following the footprints was too dangerous. But Jin Wu Ram ignored their words. Hundreds of awakened are being raised as food. Among them are the main members of each guild. If we lost them all, then there is no future for South Korea. But the behavior of the creatures has become strange since a few days ago. They have become very violent. That's right, the reason was unknown, but the creatures had lost their senses a few days ago. They ran wild and smashed everything. Even birds couldn't escape being wiped out. Jin Wu Ram knew all this. However, he was still confident until the end. 10 days ago, the drone reconnaissance confirmed that they are alive. Abandoning the survivors. If you leave, then never show up in front of me again. Jin Wu Ram's words caused silence. No one wanted to say anything. They confirmed that hundreds of awakened were alive, but 10 days had already passed. 10 days. They could have been killed in that time. The creatures had gone wild, so they couldn't confirm how many were still alive. To be honest, few of the members were very hopeful. They were convinced that all the captured people were already dead. Nevertheless, Jin Wu Ram didn't give up hope. If hundreds of awakened were alive, then there was hope that the situation could be overturned. There was a low probability. The lives of the 50 people here were also at risk. There are a number of airborne creatures, so we need to move as carefully as possible. Jin Wu Ram went ahead first. The ruined soul. The 50 people moved to find the slightest bit of hope. Before long, the target location was found. Jin Wu Ram and the team spread prepared troll feces all over their bodies. The stench penetrated their noses, but they didn't care. This act was skillfully carried out like they were accustomed to it. A pair of awakened with detection and stealth skills went on patrol. There is a tunnel 500 meters from here. We can avoid the creatures and verify the situation. Jin Wu Ram was extremely prudent as a leader. He wanted to save the survivors, but he needed to confirm it first. He couldn't move recklessly. If those gathered here were wiped out, the bad situation in South Korea would get worse. The scouting members spread out as much as possible. They were to closely watch the movements of the creatures in order to be prepared. Kurik, Kuu. The trolls drooled and looked around blindly. It made them extremely anxious. Fearsome teeth were revealed. The ogres didn't hide their desire to kill. One wrong move would turn the members into victims. Just imagining it was terrible. There are approximately 500 trolls and 3 ogres. Jin Wu Ram's mind was complicated. The number of South Korean talents being held was approximately 30,000. 500 was a small number, but the number of awakened moving around South Korea was limited. The 5 large guilds in the past were almost in decline. Communication was cut off and the survivors were besieged by sudden raids. It was no different from the entire guild system collapsing. Survivors have been found. There are 200 people alive. Their conditions are very poor. Soon the radio went off. 200 survivors. Jin Wu Ram gripped his fists tightly. If we can rescue them safely, there could be a reversal. It could form a basis for driving the creatures out of the collapsed soul. However, he was temporarily off guard due to that joy. Kiek. A few wyverns in the air found him and cried out loud. Although they were covered with the troll feces, their bodies weren't hidden. Once confirmed with the naked eye, they were humans again and the targets of the creatures. Gruruk, Gurik. The trolls turned their heads. Kung, Kawang. The ogres also moved their massive bodies. Damn. Jin Wu Ram spat out with disgust. The wyverns were a problem. They blocked the rear, so 3 team members had already died. The situation was the worst. They would surely be wiped out. Therefore, Jin Wu Ram and the team members chose to struggle. Let's show them the power of humans. If they were going to die, then they would take as many creatures with them as possible. The humans couldn't be looked down on. Although their numbers were small, all the awakened here were quite influential. They would let these creatures know that humans weren't just food. The dignity of humankind wouldn't be trampled on by the creatures. Everyone had the idea of taking at least half down with them. And the sword-wielding Jin Wu Ram shouted into the radio. We will be the bait to buy some time. Help the survivors escape. They would fight to the death. It was okay if they died. The world had changed and their precious people had already died. There was nothing to lose, so they would have no regrets about being buried in the ground. Most of the awakened gathered here felt this way. So, they hoped the survivors would be rescued while they died. They hoped. It was a small sacrifice. Quack. Skin was torn with their swords. Blood was spilled. The team members were desperate. Captain, don't dawdle. A desperate voice flowed from the radio. Jin Woo Ram couldn't afford to talk. He was enclosed on all sides. Team members prayed as they died. Dear God, look down on us. I don't mind dying, so please. Please. Kuik. Screams from the members could be heard every moment. The group of 50 was cut in half in an instant. They couldn't drag out the time. If they hung in there a little bit more, then morale would rise. Jin Woo Ram cut down a troll and shouted, "We are humans. We are strong." 10 minutes. No, it wasn't even 5 minutes. There was a clear possibility the survivors could get out alive if they lasted that long. Those sent to scout were all strong. The ones who hid their bodies came out. But the ogres joined forces and it became more difficult. Kwaduk, Kung, they were being stepped on. It was impractical to think about the dignity of humans. The end? It was only up to here. Jin Woo Ram bit his lip. Everyone slowly gave up hope. Quack, a knight in silver armor, ran among the creatures. His long lance was swung and killed dozens of trolls at once. Waruruk, black fire hit the creatures and burned them down. The survivors, including Jin Woo Ran, naturally turned their gazes in that direction. At the same time, their eyes widened. Black flames and huge wings. A person wearing a skull mask and black armor. An overwhelming presence could be felt just by looking at him. Grr. The creatures also hesitated as they felt something. The Silver Knight ran like the wind and quickly cut down the creatures. It took no more than 10 minutes to wipe out the 500 creatures. Everyone was at a loss for words. After the situation was wrapped up, Rose opened her mouth. How is it? Do you see Rose's skills? Roy just watched. She moved M3 alone. I briefly recalled the scene of M3 fighting. There are too many unnecessary tricks. Rose pouted. Queen Nim praised me, as expected. Master is too picky. I'll try harder. Still, her attitude of not giving up was commendable. She didn't seem like a child, and this might be due to Chrisley's influence. She was properly trained. After killing all the enemies, M3 made its way over. Behind it, the 20 awakened were just staring blankly. Who is the representative? Me. A bear-like man came out. I immediately looked with mind's eye. Name: Kim Woo Ram. Occupation: hero, warrior. Title: * take charge. R. Strength +4. * early stage master fighter. U. Strength and stamina +3. Stats: Strength 62, +7, Intelligence 55. Agility 49, Stamina 57, +3. Magic Power 52. Potential: 275 +10 368. Uniqueness: none. Skill: Warrior's Will. U. Sensory activation. R. Identify weakness. X. U. This was a good level for a human. The levels of the other awakened were similar as well. I spoke to Jin Woo Ram, who was awkwardly standing there. There are other awakened not far away. Their attack? Ah. Jin Woo Ram realized the important fact and pulled out his radio. All the creatures have been dealt with. Join us. That? Are you serious? There was external assistance. I understand. We will immediately depart. After a short radio conversation, Jin Woo Ram turned towards me. Thank you so much for saving us. I am a member of the Mithril Guild, Jin Woo Ram. It was familiar. I frowned and asked, the top 5 guilds? That's right. Although now we are mere scraps, of course, everyone gathered here doesn't belong to the Mithril Guild. I knew a few points. It was because Gaparam's book contained some details mentioned. But this was the first time I had seen a living awakened in South Korea. Are you moving to rescue the survivors? I didn't think this type of force still remained. We have a base in Yongin. Do you mind if I ask who you are? A hunter. Huh? Jin Woo Ram and his team showed signs of alarm. However, I was reluctant to admit that I was the leader of the Devil Hunters raid group when I was accompanied by Dark Elves. Things were occurring different from my previous life, so there was a possibility of pandemonium using the humans. Maybe the fact that I was the Devil Hunter's captain had already been identified. It would be different in my past life, but Okulos had already broken the taboo. There is nothing wrong with being careful. It was hard to see ahead. The stereotypes needed to be boldly broken down. I cleaned up my thoughts and murmured, "I have no intention of harming you. I'm sorry. If you don't reveal it properly, then I can't easily believe you. Besides, the identities of the two dark elves beside you are very suspicious. Thank you for saving us, but we can't let our guard down." Jin Woo Ram explained with restless eyes. It was like I expected. On the other hand, Rose exploded. Queen Nim's words are correct. Humans really are stupid. Why do they doubt Master who saved them? I would have killed them already if I wanted to. Stay still. Yes. Rose's cheeks reddened. Roy just fidgeted and looked between Rose and I. Both of them were cute like Yi, but now wasn't the time to appreciate it. I am going to the south. I will be getting rid of any creatures I meet along the way. You can follow me or go your own way. I turned around after saying that. Rose poked her tongue out at the humans before following behind me. Captain Nim. Shit. Jin Woo Ram frowned as one of his team members spoke. After the 200 survivors joined them, the group would have to lead them back to Yongan. If they encountered any creatures while heading to the south, then there could be massive amounts of victims. Jin Woo Ram glanced at the surviving awakened. They couldn't even rebel properly and were almost wiped out by 500 creatures. It was difficult to think of that person as a human. He had never heard of dark elves following a human before. Should they follow the mystery man or try to head to the south with their own strength? After a moment of thinking, Jin Woo Ram made a decision. Follow. They had no choice. Chapter 147 to 151, Guardian Deity. The demons who entered my dungeon. Half the creatures they brought had been removed from the dungeon. They were released all over South Korea and hadn't yet been cleaned up. It was ridiculous that there was such a large number of creatures. Other demons. Or it might be aid from pandemonium. I touched my jaw. By now, the demons would be aware that there was a problem. They would be planning their next move. So, I planned to wipe out all the creatures while making them aware of a strong presence. I would use it to confuse pandemonium. A special event. Special events had happened several times in my previous life and referred to things like the Angel's Descent or the emergence of the cruel Commander Maxium. I knew how to cause one event. I wouldn't have even dared dream of it before stepping into the realm of transcendence as well as obtaining the treasures of the Hell Monarch. I formed a small smile. Waruruk. A pair of large black wings fluttered on my back. They were slightly different from the ones I received when corruption was used. They were an item transformed after eating Pride's flames. I recalled the brief description of the item called 1,000 Wings. Name: 1,000 Wings, Epic. Description: wings that are said to be capable of holding thousands of different types of magic power. Asterisk: the user can absorb and store the magic power of creatures that they kill. Asterisk: the color will change depending on the type of magic power absorbed. Asterisk: once the limit is reached, it is possible to use the skill, 1,000 Summoned Doors. Asterisk: the amount of stored magic power 445,344 1/millionths. It was an epic item with no stats, skills or titles. If I couldn't see the hidden options with mind's eye, then it would have been a trash item. It certainly wasn't worth paying 5,000 achievement points for. However, the hidden options were remarkable. There were restrictions, but it was an item that enabled the use of an exceptional epic skill. Besides, I was familiar with the skill. Name: 1,000 Summoned Doors, X Epic. Description: a unique monster can be summoned, depending on the specific place or time. The summoned creature won't follow the summoner's commands but will act according to its own uniqueness. It was ambiguous, but I knew a similar skill that had been triggered. As a result, something happened. It was a half-step lower skill called Traditional Summoning Door, Epic. A human had used it to reverse the destruction in South Korea. Immense wealth and great sacrifices were exchanged to summon a guardian deity. I didn't see the summoning with my own eyes, but it was enough to stop the demon's invasion. 1,000 Summoned Doors was a higher-rated compatible skill. If I collected enough magic power, then it was possible to open the summoning door without any restrictions. Of course, I didn't intend to use the magic power to summon something evil. It should be helpful to humans. Wake up a guardian deity to protect South Korea. A guardian deity. It was still a creature. At any rate, I intended to wake it up in order to counterattack against pandemonium. If I wanted to do that, I needed the magic power of creatures and the origin of humans. The three-legged crow. I looked through my memories. At that time, the three-legged crow had been summoned. At first glance, it resembled a crow. It was bigger than the griffin and could cover the sun. I wasn't certain of its strength, but it seemed to be between a high-class 3LV and 4LV. The problem was, it didn't listen to the summoner. The three-legged crow certainly defended Korea, but it was fickle. After consuming the invading demons and creatures, it demanded more wealth. It liked flashy things and accumulated all types of jewels and goods on top of Mount Baekdu. It caused things like tsunamis as a joke, so the humans suffered. In the end, it was cleaned up by Grand Duke Upa. However, the strength and will of the guardian deity was apparent. It can't attack when it sees me. I was a demon. There couldn't be instinctive recognition. It wouldn't have been easy before the underground world. Now I could easily defend against the guardian deity. Master, a lot of humans have come along, Rose said as she glanced back. This was the third day. I had traveled through half this land without any rest. Meanwhile, thousands of people had seen me taking care of the creatures. Many people were following behind me. Some were civilians and a large number were awakened. I didn't rest for even 1 minute or 1 second and managed to move up to here. Despite being slow, the humans desperately tried to follow me. Their mouths were foaming as they chased after me. I need their origins in order to summon the guardian deity. Hundreds of people weren't enough. Thousands, no tens of thousands were required. Otherwise, the creature I wanted was unlikely to be summoned. Take a small break. On a small hill, I sat on a rock and closed my eyes. The procession of people stopped and rested for a while. Roy and Rose. It was the first time they had left the dungeon. They were filled with curiosity and Rose was especially active. While Roy stayed next to Dungeon Master, Rose started to move. She decided to enter the crowd of people to look at them. Oh, Savior Nim's child. As Rose approached, some humans kneeled down and raised their hands. A modest attitude. Rose blinked as one woman approached her. Are you hungry? It isn't much, but have a steamed sweet potato. Try it once. Steamed sweet potato? Yes, it is very sweet. The old woman quietly laughed as she offered the sweet potatoes. Rose bluntly grabbed one sweet potato. Wagyu. She even chewed on the skin. Sweet. It was delicious. Rose ate the sweet potato in the blink of an eye. The old woman didn't know she would eat the skin but smiled after a moment. That, Savior Nim's child. I'm Rose. By the way, are you referring to Master? What is a savior? No matter how grown up she pretended to be, Rose was young. She learned twice as fast as others, but there was still a limit. The old woman replied slowly. Rose Nim. We call him Savior Nim because he did what no one else could. Ah, Rose clapped her hands. Then Master is a savior. Queen Nim used to always say it. Nothing is impossible for Master. Master was taken away by evil, but he came back to save us all. I knew it. Master is really great. Rose nodded. Every day was really new. Queen Nim, Chrisley's words weren't wrong. Her confidence in that idea grew. From all evil, he will save us. Finally, the humans interpreted it a bit differently. There were good reasons. A person taken away by evil. He came back to destroy all evil. Popular lines seen somewhere before, it was natural for him to be deemed a god. Before she knew it, thousands of people were gathered around Rose. They created a circle and listened to Rose's conversation. This was the first time Rose experienced so much attention. It was natural that she would feel flattered. You don't have to worry. I don't know why, but Master is trying to help you. Queen Nim said that Master will bring hope to the humans here. You are fragile beings, but potential can be seen. If you don't aim your sword at Master, then that potential can blossom. By the way, Queen Nim has another worry. Will humans point their swords at Master after gaining strength? I have to say this. Would you really? Rose didn't understand this point. Humans were stupid, but she couldn't imagine them raising their swords in disobedience. Were they that stupid? She wanted to ask the humans directly. Biting the hand that fed them. No matter how strong they were, it was natural that they were weaker than Master. She thought a species that would willingly walk down the path of death was strange. An endangered species became drunk on power and tried to rebel. It was ingratitude. It was impossible for the Dark Elves. Ah, no. It is a misunderstanding. I can't say that no humans would do that, but there are more good humans. So it would vary? I don't know very well, but you shouldn't cut off ties with Master. He is very strong. You should be careful. He killed 4 demons alone. Hup. Rose quickly covered her mouth. The surrounding humans started shaking. 4 demons? Perhaps. Oh my God. They didn't know why. One day, the demons made their way to Korea. There were exactly 4 of them. Depella, Anastasia, Amurin and Generald. Their names were memorized. All the people gathered here knew the names of the 4 demons. Yet, she said they were killed. Curiosity filled the eyes looking at Rose. Rose ignored them and turned around. Ah, I don't know. I will be going now. Master said that he will be moving after 3 hours. Rose threw Master an embarrassed look. Master didn't say it directly, but Rose was aware of her role. It was to get the humans to follow him. If not, Master wouldn't have bothered to wait for the humans to follow. Rose noticed and said a mix of facts to the humans. Thanks to this, the faith of the humans became even stronger. Mentioning the demons was dangerous, but that was only if they found out Master was a demon. Envy would fill their eyes. Now people who believed in Master would appear. Did I do well? Rose was young but noticed quickly. She instinctively understood psychological methods. So she was somewhat certain that her answer was correct. That's right. Then Rose hurriedly turned to the old lady and said, "Can I have 2 more steamed sweet potatoes? I want to give one to Master." One was for Master. She would eat the other one. She didn't think of Roy. It was the first time she had ever tasted the delicious sweet potatoes. A large difference. I collected 800,000 of the required 1 million magic power. The number of creatures had shrunk, so they were much more difficult to find now. The number of humans joining increased steadily. It already exceeded 20,000. Some became tired in the middle and dropped out. They wanted to know about me. But I had an invisible wall around me and nobody could approach. There is no need to reveal my identity. It wasn't necessary to reveal that I was a demon or the captain of devil hunters. The important thing was the mystery. A veil was needed in order to sublimate my existence. In that sense, Rose was quite helpful. She maximized their curiosity and I became a religious figure for some humans. Putting their faith in a demon. It was funny, but it wasn't bad considering what I needed to do in the future. Their origins were essential for summoning the guardian deity I desired. The guardian deity would move to a certain extent in accordance with the origin of humans. If they followed me even more, I might be able to exert influence on the guardian deity. I followed this plan and more of the faithful gathered as I moved. Late in the evening, once a full moon hung high in the sky, I discovered a group of people fighting. Water Boom, Torpedo Sword, Shawaruruk, Quajijing. There were 50 humans present. All of them were awakened, engaged in battle against a number of creatures. I stared at some faces among them. Hai, behind you, leave the Orc Lord for me. Edward, damn, the familiar names rang in my ears. The Devil Hunters raid group. I moved my eyes over the creatures. There were quite a lot left. There were common orcs, orc shamans, orc warriors and orc lords. There were a staggering 1,000 orcs. However, the humans had the numerical advantage after my appearance. There were over 10,000 people behind me. I raised my hand to tell them to stay still. At the same time, Waruruk, Pride's flames were created in the air. I pointed my finger and a black fireball flew towards an orc lord. Quarurung, a huge explosion. The orc lord and the nearby orcs evaporated without leaving a single trace behind. Oh, Savior Nim, Savior Nim. Many of the humans following me kneeled down and watched. They had been marching for a few days. Their stomachs were hurting and their stamina was low. It was the same for the awakened. The driving force that moved them was their faith in me. To them I was a messenger of God, or maybe God himself. A person who would punish evil. The defender of justice. It was clear that I was a deep existence inside their hearts. A savior who appeared after 1 year of suffering. It didn't matter if he dragged both dark elves and humans with him. Rather, The inhuman appearance made their faith even stronger. The more cruel and cold I was, the more attracted the humans became to me. It was a little odd, but in the end, they wanted a monster. A real monster to annihilate the monsters. It fits me. A hunter should know the monsters well. So I should be a monster. In that sense, I would fulfill their faith. As far as I knew, humans have never put their faith in a demon. Demons normally made them feel anger, fear, etc. It was a funny feeling, but it wasn't bad. Walk. The wings that absorbed the magic power were exquisite. They already exceeded 5 meters in length. Once I injected magic power into the wings, hundreds of small fireballs would pop out. The Skilpridian 1,000 wings could be used together. Quang, quang, kururung. The fireballs hit the ground. The ground shook like an earthquake was occurring, and there was a thick fog. Queek, queek. 200 orcs were wiped away at once, and the attention of the orcs turned towards me. An orc lord whose body was burnt enough to see the bones ran over with a big sword. The devil hunters were busy dealing with their own opponents, but the orc lord never reached me. Keng, Puik, M3 consecutively took down 2 orc lords. In the aftermath of the fight, it was tired and injured, but M3's strength was quite amazing. How dare an ugly orc run towards Master? That's right. Rose puffed angrily with both hands on her waist. Next to her, Roy gave a small nod. In the meantime, the Devil Hunters raid group was still moving. Despite being pushed numerically, they used wise and resourceful methods. Being able to grasp an opportunity was a skill itself. Un Hai, Water Boom, Electronic Shock. The water magician Li Ji Hai. She used a huge ball of water to form a bomb. Un Hai followed with an intense burst of electricity. The combination caused a significant explosive power. Quang, Quajijijik. The water bomb exploded, and then the electricity hit the water droplets on the orcs. The electricity penetrated their bodies, and 30 orcs shook before collapsing. Edward jumped between the panicking orcs. Every time he swung his longsword, an orc's head flew into the air. The other team members weren't as good as these 3. Out of the awakened I had seen so far, they were the best. Great growth. After unintentionally leaving, devil hunters had become more solid. I decided to stop intervening in their battle and used Mind's Eye. Name: Un Hai. Occupation: Hero, Lightning Magician. Title: Dozen lightning strikes. R. Magic power +4. Enlightened lightning spirit. U. Magic power +7. Laid the foundations for a magic swordsman. U. Strength, agility and stamina +3. Stats: Strength 55, +3, Intelligence 78. Agility 63, +3, Stamina 61, +3. Magic power 66, +1. Potential: 323 + 2423. Uniqueness: has received the protection of the spirit of lightning. A state received after being hit by lightning and standing in the doorway between life and death. Skill: Lightning Sword, XU, Electronic Shock, U, Enhanced Strength, U, Passive. Name: Li Ji Hai. Occupation: Hero, Water Magician. Title: Walking on Water, U, Intelligence and Magic power +4. Stats: Strength 33, Intelligence 75, +4. Agility 29, Stamina 32. Magic power 75, +4. Potential: 244 + 8, 277. Uniqueness: none. Skill: Water Barrier, XR, Water Boom, U, Water Mind, XU. Name: Edward Windsor. Occupation: Hero, Warrior. Title: Warrior pushed to a corner, XU, Strength +8. Weapon Destroyer, U, Strength and Stamina +4. Stats: Strength 67, +18, Intelligence 49. Agility 60, Stamina 74, +4. Magic power 41. Potential: 291 + 22, 441. Uniqueness: chosen by the Cursed Sword, Breaker. Skill: No Pain, U, Weapon Destruction, XU, Sprint, XR, Melee, U. Skill and item effects: Magic Swordbreaker, XU, Strength +6. The growth of Un Hai and Edward Windsor was great. When simply looking at their stats, they had more than doubled. There were even moderately high-grade skills, so I could see how hard they pushed themselves. They were worthy of being some of the strongest humans before I came back. Although Yu Un-hai was still weaker than me, I wasn't judging her against myself. In her current condition, she would be able to fight against advanced creatures. In fact, Yu Un-hai was challenging an orc lord. Pant, crazy orc scum, don't suddenly pop out, she kept talking while fighting the orcs. All of the team members were exhausted after the battle. Still, they were looking with interest at my side. There was no other options. The humans following behind me like a religion were enough to reverse the situation. The first one to approach was Li Ji-hai. Thank you for the help. I am the temporary captain of the Devil Hunters raid group, Li Ji-hai. Li Ji-hai extended her hand. I was currently wearing infinity armor and 1,000 wings. There was also a skull mask, so she failed to notice my identity. Certainly, my outer appearance had changed. My stature had increased, so they probably wouldn't be able to easily notice. I stared at her hand before turning around. Li Ji-hai was puzzled. Excuse me? Wait, stop, hey you. Where did you get that? That mask is a symbol of our Devil Hunters raid group. She took out a similar mask from her chest and waved it. She tried to follow, but Rose blocked the path. Don't tail him. Tail? No, rather, a dark elf. Li Ji-hai's eyes widened. Dark elves. She had traded with dwarves in the past, but the dark elves had always been aggressive. They were a creature to be cautious of inside the dungeon. But now, dark elves were with a human. It was natural to be surprised. Rose's small tongue poked out a little bit as she spoke. Fairy Nim said that I should stop women from twisting around Master. Bah, I can clearly see that you are uglier than Queen Nim. Yi would occasionally meet with Rose and would give her some advice. Many of those words were related to women. Li Ji-hai was confused to have a young dark elf talking to her like this. What are you people doing here? Humans call our master a savior. He does what no one else can do. Savior? Li Ji-hai turned around. Almost all those here were following only one person. They bowed down with their foreheads to the ground. The only word they shouted was, Savior. Rose flicked her head. She turned around. We are busy. If you want to follow, then follow. Let's go, Roy. Rose took Roy's hand and slowly walked away. Yu Un-hai and Edward approached Li Ji-hai with complicated expressions. Uni, what are we going to do? I don't know. I guess the words heard on the radio were correct. Not all communication was dead. There was periodic communication with those distributing supplies, the ones in charge of warehouses, and the people kept separated. She heard that the savior had come. It was only after arriving here that the Devil Hunters confirmed his identity. That person, he is familiar for some reason. The masked man. Yu Un-hai gazed at his back. He was a blunt man. Li Ji-hai also looked at him. Have you forgotten? He is already dead. Even if he is dead, we have still survived. Anyway, it is Uni's decision. Devil Hunter's leader is Uni. Yu Un-hai sighed. There were shadows under her eyes. Li Ji-hai contemplated for a while before nodding. We will join. There seem to be many awakened. Having a lot of people will be helpful. The invasion had been abrupt and proceeded very quickly. Demons and creatures. They knew what the weaknesses of humans were in occupied Korea. The capital city was smashed before it even reacted. They didn't want to give time for the clever humans to unite together. But they still united. The humans gathered. If they could gather people, then they didn't need to be afraid of the creatures. Who is he? Is he really a savior? She didn't know. One thing was for certain, his strength was far beyond her imagination. He shattered a huge orc lord and hundreds of orcs. Yu Un-hai, who was the strongest, wouldn't be able to imitate his actions. Although he felt familiar, it didn't make sense that he would be called a savior. Li Ji-hai started to organize her thoughts. Humans were scary. Once they started believing in something, they wouldn't be able to see the depths around it. They believed in their faith and that it was the way to glory. Of course, that belief could be a driving force that made them crave life. However, it could also have the adverse effect of making fanatics. Woo, woo, small sounds filled the area. It wasn't an orderly song. It was more like bizarre moaning. People are strange. Edward saw Ed while looking around. It isn't strange. Yu Hai denied his words. At the moment, they were walking in the rear. Only those with a strong belief in the Savior could stand near him. Nuna, don't you think it is strange? It looks so weird. Everything has fallen apart. It is gone. Just when they couldn't see anything, someone offered their hands. He is a savior to them. It was the reason Yu Hai had followed that man 2 years ago. Despite being dangerous and often disappearing, he was someone who shone brightly to her. However, now he was gone. The world was already on the brink of destruction and he didn't show up when it was in danger. Even when precious people died, or when his home was lost. Indeed, I would go crazy if Nuna disappeared. Don't say something so strange. You have the power to live alone. So what if I have power? I don't want to, hee. Edward laughed with a playful expression. The atmosphere just then had seemed somewhat depressing. Next to him, Li Ji Hai gazed at the long procession and asked, "Where are we going?" The answer came from elsewhere. The land of heaven. Savior Nim is leading us to a place with no worries. A passerby said while shedding tears. But Li Ji Hai refuted these words. Don't you see the angels? They believe that it is more important to destroy the demons. Humans aren't a high priority. They are fake angels. Savior Nim is the only one who knows the real road to heaven. According to Savior Nim and his children, we can go to heaven. I am too young to go there already. You who lack faith, do you still have doubts about Savior Nim? Li Ji Hai replied, I know that he is strong. He took care of the creatures that we couldn't, so I am thankful. But it is unlikely that he is leading us to heaven. The passerby sighed like he was grieving. Then other people joined and surrounded Li Ji Hai. You don't deserve to be in this line. Heretics. Heretic. A fiery reaction. Li Ji Hai was forced to panic at the sudden crisis. I am a heretic just because I don't believe? Wait a minute, stop. Li Ji Hai couldn't stay still any longer because people started grabbing at her hair and clothes. The Devil Hunters raid team rescued Li Ji Hai and confronted the group. Ugly woman. At that moment, a voice was heard. Oh, Savior Nim's child. It was like looking at Moses's miracle. The people immediately gave way for the dark elf girl. They stopped criticizing Li Ji Hai. The girl stood in front of Li Ji Hai and the Devil Hunters. Master says we are moving. All the people around you as well. However, Rose won't forgive you if you stab Master in the back. Only Queen Nim can stay beside Master. Do you understand? They didn't know who Queen Nim was. But the previous atmosphere had gone away. Rose left after saying those words. Savior. Oh. The people flattened their bodies like frogs and bowed. Uni, let's go. Yu Hai's voice broke through to Li Ji Hai. Why yes. Go. Li Ji Hai swallowed her saliva and walked away. She felt like she was walking into a lion's mouth. Exactly 10 days. Most of the creatures in South Korea were wiped out. The number of humans following me grew exponentially and reached 30,000. And I receive an achievement at the same time. The faith of 30,000 humans has successfully been acquired for the first time. The achievement is beyond what can be read. Looking for similar achievements and rewards. 0.001 achievement points will be obtained per person. The decimal points will be rounded up. 35 achievement points have been added. There was something like this? The reward itself wasn't that great, but the system window meant it was worth keeping an eye on. If millions of people had faith in me, then it would be possible to earn high achievement points. It didn't seem impossible when looking at the growing trend. Of course, it would be faster to do other work, but it could be considered a supplementary income. There was nothing bad about it, especially when it came to my achievements score. Stop. It happened when we were nearing Busan. Many soldiers and armored vehicles blocked the path in front of me. There were no helicopters or fighter jets visible. I heard that the demons had hit the Air Force bases first. It was surprising that the ground troops still existed. I hadn't read any news about them, but now their motives were clear. They intended to get rid of the creatures. The man talking into the loudspeaker was wearing a hat with 3 stars. We are planning to recapture Seoul. Cooperate. He added a few words, but nothing was clear. They meant to force cooperation. If you try to leave, vicious scum, you pop out when the creatures disappear? What have you been doing up to this point? Savior Nim is the one who removed all the creatures. The reactions of those who followed me were quite intense. It seemed like during the full-scale attack, they abandoned the people and retreated to a far corner. The people had lost serious faith in the soldiers. The blood pressure of the survivors rose. The soldiers stand for South Korea. There were limited resources and no supplies, so the only way was to be self-sufficient. But now it is different. Once Seoul is reoccupied, you can live a comfortable life as before. The technology developed using the cores has been put into practical use. Awakened, cooperate with us. Let's recapture Seoul together. It was no different from an armed demonstration. The soldiers were trying to use the weapons to force the people. However, my side included a much larger number of awakened. They even had faith in me. Bullshit. The people spat and expressed their disbelief. Master, it is noisy. What is that thing? Rose frowned due to her sensitive ears. It is called a loudspeaker. Can I get rid of it? Chiok. Instead of answering, I took one step forward. At that moment, all the noise disappeared. The people complaining and the soldiers became silent. But the atmosphere was just like before an explosion. Walk. I made a huge sphere with pride's flames. The round sphere of flames floated into the sky like a sun. The flames that were twice as large as an armored vehicle constantly expanded and compressed. I had 110 points in magic power. It was the highest of all my stats, so even a low-rated skill could offer more destructive power. There was nothing to say if an epic grade skill was used. Kuong. I stretched out my hand and the compressed sphere hit a mountain. A short explosion. The mountain that was 700 meters tall unexpectedly evaporated. An action that was impossible for current humans. It was something that couldn't even be called power. The soldier shouting through the loudspeaker was silent after seeing the scene. He wasn't the only one from among those watching. There was nothing to say. It was like a wonderful dream had just soared into the sky. They stared blankly. This was a warning. If they made more noise, then I would bury them. God. A god? Beyond a savior, I now had the title of a god. The murmurs weren't only heard from the people behind me. The soldiers. They were humans as well. I had learned about humans through the machine. Every human was different, but they still followed the same laws. I had already received their faith and the number of followers exceeded tens of thousands. My abilities were impossible to reproduce. Duck. Duck. The soldiers started to drop their guns. Then, like wildfire, all of them started putting down their arms. Those in the armored vehicles came out with hands lifted. They had no intention of hostile behavior. What are you doing? Didn't you see it? Humans can't disobey a god. The soldiers were intensely agitated. Just then, a scream was heard from near the mountain I blew up. Kung. A giant carrying a huge rod came rushing over. One of its two heads had disappeared, but its presence was overwhelming. A twin-head ogre, one of the strongest creatures. It had been attacked and wounded near the mountain. It breathed harshly as it ran uncontrollably. At the very least, it was a species that common humans couldn't deal with. The twin-head ogre had appeared after its habitat was destroyed. People instinctively felt fear because of its size and ugliness. Thousand wings expanded. Just like the name, the wings could fly in the air. I flew horizontally along the ground and bumped into the twin-head ogre. Kururung. The twin-head ogre had dull movements but great power. It probably had at least 100 points in strength. But that was the same for me. 105. It was higher than the twin-head ogre. I grabbed the hands holding the rod and pushed them away. I felt the twin-head ogre hesitate. It never imagined it would be pushed in a pure power struggle. Creatures and demons made a point of avoiding a strength contest with a twin-head ogre. But I engaged in a frontal attack. I didn't let go of the rod. Soon the body of the twin-head ogre was laying down on the ground. It tried to get up, but it was off balance due to losing one head. I pulled out the Emperor's sword, and my sword cut through its neck. Fuok. Blood spurted, but I didn't care. The twin-head ogre stopped breathing. God, a guardian deity. Similar words emerged from their mouths. Guardian deity? That name didn't really suit me. I shook the blood off my sword and turned away. Then I walked towards the soldiers. Gulp. All of the soldiers were tense. I moved slowly and didn't stop as I got closer. Words weren't necessary. The soldier in the very front stepped aside. The other soldiers saw it and quickly moved their legs. The dense group of soldiers parted and formed a road. As I walked through the center, people started to follow. I gathered all the required magic power for the wings. The creatures had dried up and the number of people increased to 40,000. It is time. Now it was time to open the summoning door. In my previous life, the three-legged crow had emerged. I knew the place where he was summoned. If I went to the same place and used 1,000 summoned doors, it was highly likely that I would see the three-legged crow. The result of 1,000 summoned doors depended on the specific time, place or object. At the very least, I needed to adjust the location. I crossed the border to North Korea. The situation in North Korea was worse than South Korea. I couldn't see any people at all. There was no one to block me, so the march was much quicker. The few creatures I encountered were wiped out. After 3 days, I reached my destination. I lifted my head and looked up at the mountain touching the sky. Mount Baekdu. I had arrived at my final destination. Mount Baekdu was foggy. My wings filled with 1,000,000 magic power were noticeable even in the fog. The people were nervous. They seemed to think this was the path to heaven. A demon leading them to heaven. It was a delusion. Even if it was possible, I didn't want to open the door to take them there. I just wanted to open the door. It was a demonstration that would confuse pandemonium. Their desires were different from mine. However, their origin was needed. Their wish to be happy and go to heaven would be a great help in opening the summoning door. 1,000 summoned doors. I used the skill near a lake. At that moment, the wings scattered in every direction like smoke. They formed a circle in the air. The skill, 1,000 summoned doors, X epic, has been used. The summoning door has been successfully opened. There was a smile on my face. As if their souls were being sucked in, the magic power of the humans was dragged into the summoning door. It was a magic power created by their origin. I wasn't certain whether the three-legged crow would be summoned again. However, the number of people here meant that the summoned creature certainly wouldn't be ordinary. Juk, juk, the circle was torn open. A large body passed through the circle and soon landed on the ground. Its size was 30 meters. A slender body and 4 feet. A long face and fur. The sharp eyes turned to me. It was asking who I was. There was a strong inquiring expression on its face. It wasn't the three-legged crow. It was totally different. I studied the body of the creature. It was unusual. The summoned creature had 9 tails. The horn on its forehead made it seem like a unicorn, but the flowing magic power felt very different. It was close to divine power, but it was too ambiguous to call it divine power. At first glance, it looked similar to a deer. However, the face resembled a dragon. It also had the feet of a horse, so I doubted its identity. Chimera? A chimera was made from various living creatures, so it seemed to be similar. But this creature was overflowing with health compared to a chimera. I couldn't determine the identity. I confirmed it properly using mind's eye. Name: Giran, TL. Korean version of Kilin. Stats: Strength 105, Intelligence 100. Agility 90, Stamina 80. Magic Power 105. Potential 480. Uniqueness. The name comes from a combination of 2 characters, Gi, Chi, for male and Rin, Lin, for female. It is a hairy beast in charge of sacred areas. It was originally born from the imagination of a god and the origin of many humans. Skill: Consecration, Epic, Giran, Epic, Imagination Barrier, X Epic. Despite mind's eye being raised to an epic rating, there were still question marks. It wasn't unexpected since the flow of magic power was completely different. It originally did not exist. I stared at the words written in the uniqueness section. In other words, it was created. If a real god was summoned, then the balance would be disturbed. From what I had seen, the three-legged crow ate dragons, but the Giran would be able to push back against it. It was similar to the three-legged crow. Kua! The Giran cried out. Even the people far away became aware of its existence. Giran, oh, a real guardian deity has appeared. The cheers only lasted a moment. The surrounding world started to reverse. Before I knew it, the sun split into 9 and the mountaintop became a sea. I immediately noticed the barrier. A sacred deity. It noticed my essence and took an aggressive stance. I have the advantage in stats. The problem was the skills. The imagination barrier skill was X epic and the following 2 skills were just question marks. I guess I can't just pass. The Giran moved its huge body. The hooves of a horse stepped down on me. Kwang. At the same time, I struck. Imagination barrier. It was fake, but it wasn't fake. Any wounds received here would actually hurt. The humans were isolated, so the Giran and I were the only ones within this barrier. Humans outside the barrier were just watching my fight with the Giran. What should I do? There was a moment of distress. The answer was clear. I pulled out the Emperor's sword. It was surrounded by a dark aura that swallowed all the light around it. The sunlight had increased by 9 times, but it better revealed Dark Sword's appearance. I'll tear off your fur and fix it for you. It would have been easy before I went to the underground world. I would have been soundly beaten. But I had now broken my limits. My feet moved forward. Of course, I wouldn't kill it. I needed to make it yield before it would follow my intentions. The Giran was the right creature to provoke pandemonium. In addition, the Giran seemed like a sacred existence if I just looked at the attitude of the humans. The Giran also showed no moves to harm the humans. The Giran had a harmony with humans, meaning it would block pandemonium and his creatures. If that happened, I could buy some time. Quarurung. Numerous lightning strikes appeared in the clear sky. I wouldn't be pushed in pure stats. Except for strength, everything else was high. But skills were just as important as stats. Imagination barrier was more difficult than I thought. It clearly showed the Giran's imagination. Impossible miracles kept occurring in this place. Hop. The Giran used its 9 tails and swallowed one of the 9 suns. Then it inhaled and spat out the sun. Waruruk. The approaching sun felt like it could swallow the world, so I felt a little alarmed. I can't be careless. It seemed like a serious situation. If I was hit, then it was likely I would end up in a shabby condition. Paranormal. Paranormal's blessing. High magic power, 110. And intelligence, 105. Calibration has increased the magic power rate by 1.2 times. Magic power plus 6 for 30 minutes. It was different from the previous times. The efficiency of the item had increased due to my transcendent stats. It was like a craftsman bringing out the potential of a tool. Either way, my magic power reached 116 points. It was a shame for the Giran. I would use my strength to smash the sun head on. I made Pride's flames burn more intensely. Then I added the power of Lightning God to it. It was the power I previously used to destroy the Titan. I won't be pushed back when it comes to output. Despite the imaginary work, I was the owner of a transcendental power. In the first place, transcendence meant going beyond reality, so it wasn't greatly affected by imagination. It was a little annoying. The combination of Pride's flames and Lightning God's power was comparable to the sun. I threw everything at it. Shortly after the sun hit Quarurung, there was a huge explosion. The boundaries of the barrier were burnt and the illusion started to crack. Jijijuk. The overwhelming output couldn't be endured. The Giran was confused for a moment and raised its horns. The horns reinforced the barrier. The cracked barrier was restored to its original state. I will break it. The barrier was annoying. I continued to struggle against a variety of natural disasters. The ground sprang up or molten lava would come pouring out. It wasn't something a normal body could survive, but it didn't end there. I once again brought out Pride's flames. I was going to smash the barrier. Cheek. Instead of borrowing its power, I poured Lightning God directly into Pride's flames. Lightning God seemed to hesitate for a moment but soon gave up. The great power was then compressed to the size of a fist. The power was incomparable to before. I threw it towards the barrier. As soon as the compressed power hit the barrier, it sucked in everything around it like a black hole. It was the same with the shield around the barrier. Everything was absorbed into the sphere. The Giran's horn shone intensely, but the recovery rate was slower than the breakdown rate. It would soon shatter. Stop. At that moment, the voice of a woman resonated in my head. I quickly realized that the Giran was communicating with me. If this power escapes, then all the humans out there will die. Aha. She judged that it would be hard to fight against me and established the barrier. Now it seemed like she was worried about the people outside. Wasn't she a divine being born from the origin of humans? It seemed like she was capable of communicating. Things had become easier. I wanted to know her true purpose. Do you want to protect them? Evil one. Why do you want to kill all these innocent people? I don't know what you are talking about. You were the one who attacked first. I was just defending myself. Still, I spread my wings. I laughed as I confronted the Giran. They are vagrants. They lost their homes, their jobs and reached this place because of me. Didn't their origins reach out for you? Do you truly want their lives? No, most of the humans followed me here in order to feel comfortable. They didn't want any more suffering. That's why they followed me while dreaming of heaven. They didn't care about their own lives. They didn't know that their origins had been absorbed by the Giran. I turned my head and looked at the shaky humans. They don't care about that. Even if I am evil, they will follow me if it means revenge. If someone was willing to take them to paradise, they would follow people even more evil than me. You know the origin, yet you saw my essence and attacked. I brought the humans here. They truly believed in me. That belief was also included in the origin. Then you are not evil? Was she born crazy? She interpreted my words in a different way, so I corrected her again. I am evil, more evil than anyone else. However, that evil doesn't apply to everyone. Only for those I acknowledge as my enemies. They are the target of my wickedness. Humans were currently out of the question. Their level wasn't enough to even poke me in the teeth, let alone push me back. The Giran seemed to finally understand. Then, okay, I admit it. So stop your act of breaking the barrier. I don't know how to reclaim the power once it has left. You take care of it. I folded my arms and became a bystander. The Giran that reached 30 meters in height turned her head with fright. And she concentrated on the barrier. The barrier was lifted and the Giran descended to the ground. Her hostility towards me had disappeared, but she looked quite tired. The Giran didn't stop moving until she arrived in front of the people. The Giran's whole body was covered in flames and she started to gradually transform. Soon a naked woman appeared where the Giran was. The dream-like woman had burning red hair. Apart from the horn on her forehead, she looked no different from humans. But the humans were stunned by her appearance. My name is Rin. I came here due to your origins. Gulp. The people swallowed their saliva. Everyone was focused on the woman. She wasn't just beautiful. There was an unapproachable atmosphere around her. However, I can't take you to heaven. It is possible to make a similar dream, but it is just a mere illusion. Do you want it? There was silence. They had imagined it numerous times. They were hoping it would be turned into a reality. Rin continued, I'm not sure, but I feel extremely unpleasant towards those who bullied you. They trampled on this land and took away your precious things. I will punish them. Whom? Her horn shone once again. Flames spread and were absorbed by thousands of people. After this was done, she said, and the person who will end the confusion will appear here. He or she will become the real defender of this country. I watched closely. The Giran had planted embers in the humans. I wasn't sure what type of fire it was, but it was probably the Giran, epic, skill. The embers would manifest once they experienced a certain occasion. In addition, there would eventually be a leader. Among the tens of thousands of people gathered here, a true leader would appear to lead them. The faces of the humans were red. They instinctively recognized the Giran and what she was doing. Maybe the Giran was manipulating the humans with images. Anyway, I did everything I needed to do. I passed on the message. It happened while inside the imagination barrier. I told the Giran the true enemy who was trampling on humans. I remembered the conversation that just occurred. Pandemonium. His servants are stepping on this land. They caused devastation. He is a demon, but unlike me, he wants the destruction of this world. The choice is yours. Will you continue being hostile against me, or will you help the humans against Pandemonium and the other demons? Does that mean you don't want his destruction? I am a demon. I won't get revenge for the humans. So I summoned you. It will be tough if Pandemonium is at a similar level to you. You don't have to hit him. This time, 4 of his demon vassals have died. I know the location of their dungeons. Although Pandemonium will urgently dispatch demons and creatures, there will be fewer of them. Hit those places. It will be the true springboard for revenge. Springboard for revenge. I don't wish to destroy humans. I just want to kill the other demons. Think carefully and act. I am not someone you should be hostile towards. Right now, I didn't care about the dungeons of other demons. It was more important to buy some time. If I could buy a few months, then that was enough. The Giran and humans would give me that time. In addition, they could have a taste of power once they succeeded in capturing the dungeons. They might be able to start properly fighting back against other demons. Girin made the decision to hit the dungeons of Pandemonium's vassals. In that case, I didn't need to stay here. Now, I turned around. I didn't need to guide them anymore since there would be a leader. It would be better to maintain my mystique. Humans were like that. The more they didn't know, the scarier it was, or they were more inclined to follow the mysterious. Savior Nim. Where? The humans panicked once I turned my back to them. Yu Hai was the first one to arrive. Wait a minute, Yu Hai was a lightning magic swordswoman. She could move as fast as lightning. She glanced up into my eyes. Who are you? I have watched you, but I just don't know. Why do you feel so familiar? It felt like she wouldn't let me go until I answered. I was going to use a scroll to disappear from Mount Baekdu, but I opened my mouth first. You don't have the right to know yet. It is a familiar voice. Although it is familiar, I can't remember. My memory is foggy. Can't you tell me? How do I obtain the right to know? Become stronger. All the humans should be beneath you. Once you deserve it, you will know everything that you want to know. She had become stronger in 1 year and 8 months. It couldn't be compared to before. However, that was just against the human standards. If she maintained this growth, it would only be a matter of time. I wanted her to grow faster. Therefore, I pulled out 2 sheets of parchment. The advanced training room tickets. A type of ticket that could be opened. If you want to become stronger, then tear this when no one else is around. Convey the other one to the person with the most growth potential. I wouldn't have given it if her growth was below expectations. But Yu Hai and Edward Windsor's growth had fulfilled it. Unlike in my previous life, the humans couldn't be allowed to fall so easily. I would be able to gain a lot of benefits if they survived until the end. It wouldn't be bad if Yu Hai emerged as the leader. The true power of humans came from their unity. She would become a focal point to destroying the demons, and I would be controlling her from behind. It wasn't a bad development. Yu Hai glanced at the 2 pieces of parchment. She alternated between the parchment and I with tight lips. I left it at that. It is enough to make Pandemonium alarmed. He didn't know that I had returned. So it was possible he would send a large force after having contact with his demons broken. If the empty dungeons were raided, then he would have to move. In the process, there would be human casualties, but the numbers wouldn't increase significantly. Even if they were close to extinction, Yu Hai and Edward would live. The moment they entered the training room, they wouldn't be able to come out until they cleared it. Roy, you will remain. Yes, I made one more preparation. I would leave Roy here to watch. If the situation could be determined through Roy, then it would make planning tactics much easier. Rose placed her hands on her waist and scolded Roy. Didn't you hear what Master said? And don't you know that Master hates repeating things? Roy, I will take M3. Will you use me as a crutch every time? Fix that timid nature of yours. Even though he was her twin brother, Rose was heartless. Roy seemed like he was about to cry. He couldn't refuse, so he just stood there. Master, are we going now? Rose showed no signs of being shaken at all. I nodded and Rose handed me the scroll. I tore it. At the same time, light flashed and both of us disappeared from Mount Baekdu. Yi was the first to greet me after I returned to the dungeon. You came, Master. She bowed and smiled. She was quiet, but the awkwardness couldn't be erased. It was unconvincing acting. Have Chrisley and Tashmil returned? Yes. They arrived 2 hours ago. Yi carefully looked after them. She covered her mouth and gave an oh-ho-ho laugh. It was different from her usual Yi. I felt like a bug was crawling on my back. Before that, Master, aren't you tired? Yi brought you some honey water as a sign of sincerity. Yi reached out and a beautiful cup appeared from somewhere. It was a trick that she had learnt how to do. Please note that this cup was made by Yi. She had come a long way. Yi didn't have a sense of design, but that had changed over time. Gulp. I swallowed it. A refreshing feeling went down my throat. Delicious. Yi quickly received the cup that I threw. I have to see Chrisley and Tashmil. Yes, Master. Yi is happy to guide you. Yi bowed respectfully once more before flying off. Yi's garden. Chrisley and Tashmil were collapsed in a room like they were dead. King bees buzzed around them noisily, but they didn't budge. The quantity and quality of their magic power has risen. Tashmil's wings had grown bigger and Chrisley had a strange magic power. But I wasn't certain about one thing. How much did they grow? I quickly opened Mind's Eye. Name: Chrisley. Occupation: Master Guardian. All stats +5. Title: Asterisk person with the blood of a true demonic dragon. Epic: Intelligence +6, Magic +6. Asterisk blessed by the moon. XU, Magic power +8. Asterisk balanced. Epic: All stats +3. Stats: Strength 72, +8, Intelligence 94, +14. Agility 68, +8, Stamina 68, +8. Magic power 80, +26. Potential: 382 +64 484. Uniqueness: After going through some atrocities, the power of the true demonic dragon Aogen and the Arch-Elf Queen Sheila has been balanced with Ganak the King of Death. Skill: Large body control, XU, Undead manufacturing, Epic, Queen of the Sun and Moon, Epic, King of Death, Epic. Skill and item effects: Death Wand, XU, Set, Magic power +4. Name: Tashmal. Occupation: Fallen Angel. Title: Asterisk Angel of Light steeped in darkness. Epic, Intelligence and Magic power +6. Asterisk Suffering and Awakening. Epic, Intelligence and Magic power +5. Stats: Strength 88, Intelligence 88, +11. Agility 90, Stamina 83. Magic power 85, +11. Potential: 434 +22 471. Uniqueness: An angel that spread light into the world has now become a fallen angel. As a result of repeated suffering and enlightenment, she has become more complete. Skill: Propagation of Darkness. Epic, Barrage of Dark Spears. Epic, Dark Thunder. Epic. Item effect: Firm Conviction, XU. It was a tremendous growth. It was a level that could face other high-class creatures. They might be even stronger. They were at least between a high-class 2LV and 3LV creature. This was more than I expected. The vacancy left behind by Krasla still remained. Why you came? My dungeon master. Chrisley noticed my presence and sat up. Her complexion was pale, and indirectly told me how hard her experience was. Take a rest. No. Seeing you after a long time, I am very happy. How long did you stay there? I don't know. At least 3 years. Yet only a few days have passed here. There was a complicated expression on her face. She didn't know whether to rejoice or mourn that it wasn't 3 years later. Good job. You have become stronger. I am glad to meet Master's expectations. Oh, and Chrisley handed me a fragmented piece. It was given to me when I left the training room. There is a weird pattern. The piece was heavy. It looked like parts of it had been forcibly cut off. Strange mural paintings were carved on it. I would only be able to confirm its identity once all the pieces were gathered. Mind's Eye didn't give an explanation. Name: Piece of Balance. Description: A piece given after clearing the advanced training room. It is a piece of balance. There will be a special effect once all 5 pieces are placed together. That was all it said. Either way, I needed to join the 5 pieces together. There was a similar piece in Tashmal's arms. A piece of enlightenment. I had gathered 2. 2 tickets were given to Yu-Un Hai, so I would have to recover them later. At that moment, Chrisley unexpectedly fell to her knees. My dungeon master. In the future, I will be the sword that cuts down your enemies. Instead of Krasla? Krasla. He followed my orders like a sword. He solved everything ahead of anyone else. Yes, indeed, the vacant position had to be filled. Okay, you will be my sword and shield. Defeat my enemies in the future. And I will give you Pandemonium's head. Thank you. Chrisley bowed deeply. Chrisley had lost Krasla and many dark elves due to Pandemonium finding my dungeon and attacking. The death of 4 demons couldn't fulfill her desire for vengeance. It was just something small. Heal your body. I will be busy. My dungeon master. Can I hear your next move? I said with a laugh. I have to prepare for the Demon World auction. Demon World auction. Now that I had time, I needed to restore the dungeon and prepare for the Demon World auction. Chapter 152 to 160. Demon World auction. If my memory was clear, there was 3 months left until the 5th Demon World auction. I skipped the 4th one due to the underground world, so I needed to establish a strategy. The 3rd Demon World auction is when it fully started. Mago appeared, causing the atmosphere to change. I didn't know what came out in the 4th year. There was the Titan, but that wouldn't be all. There would be instruments of power that could reverse the situation. It was different from my previous life. The speed was rapidly increasing. I had no recollection of such speed in my previous life. The demons who suffered in the 3rd and 4th Demon World auctions were more likely to bid higher this year. The angels appeared and Okulos had died. They started to sweep the land in earnest. All the hidden cards, they were likely to be found at the Demon World auction. The demons in Okuyo's faction. I don't know what happened to them. Okulos was dead for sure. But I didn't know what happened to the demons in his faction. There was a chance they survived, but there would obviously be an impact. And if they were alive, I couldn't rule out the possibility of them being absorbed into the other factions. I had to make plans with all that in mind. In many ways, this will be the basis for the 5th year. Drastic changes. There was no reason to be stuck in the dungeon. Those who progressed slowly would be eaten right away. At this moment, pandemonium was raising and killing awakened. The collected points would be used to reinforce the dungeon as well as for the Demon World auction. I didn't know what strategy Ariel and Upa had set up. There are certainly variables. If I don't want to be shaken by the variables, something unique is required. In fact, everything around me was a variable. Right now, I needed to remain low-key and create my weapons. Points alone isn't enough. The time to use points to make my presence known was gone. Although I still held an enormous amount of points for an individual, it would be difficult to exert influence over the factions like before. I needed something else. I had to make them nervous about my presence once again. I will make changes. I nodded. The answer itself was simple. If it wasn't what I desired, then I would overturn the plate and try again. The problem was actually overturning the plate. Dubalong? I clicked my tongue. If I could contact Dubalong, then it wouldn't be difficult. Besides, the spirit world thought I was dead. I needed to contact them at least once. Their permission was required to access the Demon World auction. However, getting to the spirit world was another problem. There was no way I could get in contact with Dubalong here. If I wanted to go there, I have to open a crack. There were still many unclear parts about the cracks. There was no guarantee that the other side would be where I wanted to go. But I had the token that Dubalong gave me. The small stone was insufficient. I needed to open the crack in order to get the communication working. There was no need to cross the crack directly. The crack was a type of circuit. It would allow me to open the line of communication with Dubalong. At that time, a name popped into my head. Oswin. At that time, he had said, he made the 7 sins and then threw them into a crack. In order words, it meant he opened a crack himself. It was the only clue. I immediately moved my feet. I have to see Oswin. I hoped he had the answer. A crack, you say? Oswin was making his arms in Gaparam's workshop. He originally had 6 arms but 4 were cut off. Therefore, he was making fake arms to replace them. Gaparam and the Dwarf King were nearby, but I wasn't interested in them. I only looked at Oswin as I spoke. If you threw the 7 sins into a crack, then you must know how to open it. I know, but there is a risk. And I can't do it alone. What do you need? Oswin closed his eyes. He pondered for a moment before sighing. After forcefully opening a crack, it is possible that unknown things will pop out of it. For example, spirits from the spirit world or existences trapped in nothingness. There are many old existences stuck in the crack. They are very destructive and unreasonable. Do you think I won't be able to deal with them? Even if a transcendent presence came out, I was confident. My resolve was firm. Oswin realized this. Oswin knew he wouldn't be able to discourage me and shook his head. Okay, however, materials are required. To create the device, I also need Gaparam's help. Tell me what you need. I'll get everything ready. First, lend me Wrath. I need to create a framework for the device. Sook. I handed over Wrath without hesitation. Oswin looked at me like he was a little surprised. You are just giving it without any questions? It is something that you made in the first place. I don't remember how I created it. At any rate, Wrath isn't the only thing I need to borrow. That item called 1,000 Wings is wonderful. It is perfect for storing massive amounts of magic power. 1,000 Wings was detachable. Once the supply of magic power to 1,000 Wings was discontinued, it would fall off. Ah, the paranormal ring. That as well. The irregularity of the item is good for the crack. Anything else? Your Majesty, have I lied to you? It was unclear, but Oswin still had knowledge in this field. It was dubious in my previous life, but now I had strength. My subordinates meant I could move more efficiently. I will tell you the rest. Building the frame will take quite a bit of time, and the device is single-use only. The consumption of other materials is beyond imagination. Do you really want to open the crack? He asked for confirmation. I nodded. Open it. Okay. Then, Gaparam, will you be my assistant for a while? Gaparam, who was watching from the side, opened his mouth with slight disbelief. Can you really open a crack? How long have you lived? It seems like you have been living comfortably in the mountains for a long time. How could you not know? The dwarf king here is giving me a look of respect. Indeed, the dwarf king was looking at Oswin with infinite respect. He was paying more attention to Oswin than the dungeon master. In contrast, Oswin was a little upset that Gaparam didn't know him. Despite being in different fields, artisans should know each other. I admit that you seem knowledgeable and fairly dexterous. Tisk tisk. Wait and see. I'll push your haughty nose down properly. There was a strange war of nerves. I interrupted them. What is the estimated time for completion? At least a month. Report the progress to Yihi. Tell Yihi if you need anything. I understand. Oswin agreed. There was a way to open the crack. It would take time, so I had separate tasks to do. A remarkable achievement. For the first time, 10 feet lizardmen villages have been created. 200,000 PT will be given. 300 achievement points will be added. Great achievement. For the first time, the number of angels has increased through breeding. 400,000 PT will be given. 500 achievement points will be added. Huge accomplishment. The origin seed has been collected for the first time. However, seeds from the tree of origin won't grow into the tree. Instead, a world tree can be germinated from the origin seed under certain conditions. 1 million PT will be given. 1,000 achievement points will be added. The best way to gain points was to have many achievements. In order to fulfill my plan, I needed special achievements and special items. I had the origin seed, essence of origin, angel tier, and several other items that could only be bought from the achievements stores. My points recovered to 30 million in just 1 month. This was after restoring the dungeon, building Gaparam's workshop, investing in research, and opening the crack. And I finally received word from Oswin that the device was completed. I will return Wrath to you. Once the crack opens, Wrath and the device will act as strong transmission equipment. At first glance, Oswin's device looked no different from Wrath. Of course, the magic power was completely different, but the appearance was the same. The crack shouldn't be opened for a long time. Your Majesty is obviously strong, but you might become overwhelmed if numerous beings emerge. It is only for a short time. I understand. Then I will open the crack. In addition to recreating Wrath's outward appearance, there were a few more strange items. A compass, a gray 1,000 wings, and paranormal. They were the same but looked uglier. Oswin had made all of them. Oswin put on 1,000 wings and the ring. He infused the power of Wrath into 1,000 wings. Walk. At the same time, all types of magic power started flowing. There were flames, ice, and occasionally harsh winds. It was chaos. Light rushed and a dark passage appeared. The light was distorted by the passage. It seems that is how the crack will appear. I knew about it. It was similar to what I expected. Soon the distorted passage disappeared and the crack replaced it. It is opened. Once the magic power is removed from 1,000 wings and the ring, the crack will disappear. I placed my hand in the crack. My hand was holding the stone that Dubalong gave me. It started to vibrate as I poured magic power into the stone. Duck. I knew instinctively. The connection was made. No one should be able to contact me with this. Who are you? Dubalong. It is me. Me? I don't know. How did you obtain this communication line? Dubalong's voice was filled with intense doubts. Who else would communicate with this stone other than me? No. It was hard to imagine that Dubalong would give it to many people. Dubalong's voice shook as he noticed it. Perhaps. No, but it can't be? I said with a laugh. It has been a while. Dubalong couldn't answer. I could tell that he was surprised. I waited leisurely. I couldn't afford to be idle due to the crack, but I needed to seem free to take control of the conversation with Dubalong. Why, you are really Randolph Nim? There is no other demon that would use that name. It is ridiculous. I checked and you were erased from the system. You can see that? It meant they would know when a demon died. I asked with confusion and Dubalong replied. Please just wait a moment. I will check. It won't take long. I'll be waiting. A guest happened to arrive. I pulled back my hand. Once the crack was closed, it couldn't be reopened. Dubalong could open it separately, but it would take too long. There were only 2 months left until the Demon World auction. Since I had to keep the crack open until Dubalong returned, the delay meant an existence inevitably passed through. Oh my God, an ancient corrupted spirit. It seems like it has been in the crack for a few thousand years. Should I close the crack now? Oswin was startled as he saw the existence. Thick hands, a dark body, 2 eyes could be seen in the darkness as it floated in the air. An ancient fallen spirit, it should be an advanced creature. 10 such spirits appeared at once. I shook my head. I will deal with it. I pulled out my sword. I looked at the fallen spirits with wrath and the Emperor's sword in both hands. I can't move because I have to maintain the crack. Is it really okay? I am enough. The attribute of the spirits was darkness itself. I couldn't use dark sword and would have to deal a blow with moonlight falling. However, that was only if I followed the attribute. I was different from those creatures. My transcendental attacks ignored the attributes. The crack couldn't be closed, so I needed to take care of anything that emerged. Kuu. The fallen spirits penetrated through the darkness. It seemed like they were aggressive. But I was faster. Quack. I cut one apart. The spirit was split in 2. It is a little annoying. The fallen spirits would able to replicate themselves. I need to slice them so they can't divide. Dark sword made repairing injuries impossible, but dividing was another area. Anyway, I didn't think much about it. I would just attack them until they couldn't split anymore. Starting with the ancient fallen spirits, contaminated gnomes and gastric golems appeared through the crack. Fortunately, existences similar to Contigonam didn't show up. After buying some time, Dubalong finally contacted me. Really, you are alive. I'm really surprised. I won't die. Supik. The gastric golem was cut into 2. My dream was still valid. Sitting on the throne of the devil with a large smile. I wouldn't die until I achieved that dream. I was confident that I wouldn't die. The sounds around you are loud. Are you in a fight right now? It isn't a big deal. Waruruk. I burned the remnants of the gastric golem with pride's flames. Now everything became silent. Oh, it is quiet now. By the way, I am wondering something. Can I hear the story of where you went? Unfortunately, there is no story to tell. I want to hear how to avoid the system's eyes. I will pay a price. Dubalong said urgently. Loopholes in the system would be accompanied by enormous sacrifices. The dark spirits were eager to avoid the eyes of system. However, the underground world was already incorporated into the system. It wasn't a loss for me because I got a lot of rewards after connecting the underground world to my dungeon, but it was a pity for Dubalong. Dubalong, don't you know that there is a reason why I contacted you? Yes. Randolph Nim's time is very precious. Was the reason why you contacted me separately due to the Demon World auction? A valid reasoning. It was true that I contacted him for access to the Demon World auction. But there was something else more important. I have an offer. Offer? Dubalong, have you even thought about changing the auction method? I spoke bluntly. Dragging things on wasn't in my nature. Anyway, my side was holding the key. It never even popped into my head. Change the auction method? Dubalong's voice trembled at the unexpected words. I didn't delay. Add more items to the auction. The items will be obtained from the demons. In other words, you want to be able to contribute auction items? That's right. The anonymity of the demons contributing to the auction should be guaranteed. That isn't possible. There isn't enough time and the Dark Spirit King can't just change the fixed rules. Was that really the case? He could change the rules to his own benefit. It will cause some excitement before the auction. Please note that I will put up the Essence of Origin for auction. The Essence of Origin. The Essence of Origin. It was an item that the Dark Spirit King desired. I had asked for the 7 sins in exchange for it. It was an item that would allow someone to break through the limit. Although breaking it once was very difficult, it wasn't very hard to find the next way to break the limit. That's why Adonis desired the Essence of Origin and the Grand Dukes hid the way they broke through the limits in my previous life. Now I declared that I would put it up for auction. Dubalong was silent for a moment. Dubalong couldn't come to a conclusion, so he asked. Randolph Nim. I can guess what Randolph Nim is thinking. Can I ask you a question? You still don't understand? Isn't that why I am asking? Dubalong was confused. We had a relationship, so he speculated that I was going to hand over the essence of origin to Adonis. But now the situation changed. I couldn't overturn the plate without any changes. Adonis. He will become a participant in the auction. I spoke like it wasn't a big deal, but it was an unprecedented proposal. It would overturn the plate. I intended to drag Adonis to the surface. He would no longer be able to watch from the position of a bystander. Crazy. The Dark Spirit King is the head of the Demon World auction. Are there any rules that he can't participate? The issue of fairness, I can't decide for the Dark Spirit King. That isn't your problem. The final decision would depend on Adonis in the end. No matter how much Dubalong said, Adonis would decide in the end. Dubalong was closest to Adonis, but he was still just an advisor. What reason does Randolph Nim have to change the auction method and force the Dark Spirit King to participate? I will also benefit. How would I benefit? Adonis would be turned from a bystander into a participant. It would instill awareness in the demons that the Dark Spirit King had started to move. I wanted the confusion caused by that. The Dark Spirit King could be a double-edged variable, but he was only available for me. In addition, I could acquire more points and purchase more auction items. The demons in the other factions would covet the items I put up for auction. They were things that weren't available from the general store. It was because they were all from the achievements store. Okay, I will tell the Dark Spirit King. And, Randolph Nim's survival is very sudden, so giving you the list of auction goods in advance will be tricky. It doesn't matter. I understand. I will ask the Dark Spirit King for permission. Then all the demons will be told of the change in auction method. Don't expect much. I'm looking forward to it. Duck. The signal cut off. I had old memories. I identified the alignment of Adonis and the other demons. Adonis would respond to my deal, so I started to move in order to prepare for him. The remaining Grand Dukes. I prepared things that I knew Ariel, Upa and Pandemonium would covet. It didn't matter if they were good or not. They were things the demons wanted but couldn't obtain. There were no clues about the items. All of them were from the achievements store. To be precise, they were part of the Hell Monarch's treasure. I didn't neglect to gather points from achievements. 1 month later, a message window popped into the air. Under the authority of the Dark Spirit King Adonis, rules have been added to the auction. Prior to the full auction, individual auctions will be held. Demons can participate in the individual auctions. They can place up to 10 goods as auction items. The seller's anonymity is guaranteed. Unlike the previous auctions, spirits can participate as buyers of the individual auctions. Fire spirits and water spirits can also participate in the individual auctions. They can get a certain amount of points through a contract, and these points can be used to participate in the auction. Fire spirits and water spirits? Didn't they oppose the dark spirits? I remembered their actions in the previous Demon World auction. Perhaps something had happened in the meantime. However, there was a smile on my face. It was surprising that the other spirits were officially recognized and allowed to participate in the auction. Hooked, I was ready to overturn the plate. The Demon World auction. I chose Chrysalie to take with me. She wanted revenge. The object of her revenge was Pandemonium, but I selected her to show her off to the other demons. In her first appearance, Chrysalie was sold as an accessory to Krasla. The other demons didn't care about her. Now she was better than Krasla. She had phenomenal growth and was now recognized as a high-class creature. I wanted to see how they would respond. My emergence together with Chrysalie's growth, my smile couldn't be erased as I imagined their reactions. Ariel, Upa and Pandemonium. I'm back. I was making my debut again at the Demon World auction. They were aware that Okulos had broken the taboo and was killed. However, I became more complete in the underground world. I had set my feet firmly in the realm of transcendence. On the other hand, what about them? Was their growth comparable to mine? I felt a strange anticipation as I entered the crack and arrived at a familiar room. A dark spirit in the form of a gnome was waiting for me. Kahulul, Randolph Nim. It has been a while. The dark spirit that I always saw when traveling to the auction greeted me. It was obvious that he had heard in advance. It was good. This auction had changed in many ways. There was a limit to figuring out things on my own. I would be able to get some information from my guide. He was perfect to fulfill my curiosity. Have you been well? That's impossible. I felt very sorry when I didn't see you last year. In fact, I obtained the position of Randolph Nim's guide after much difficulty. I had a lot of fun. The dark spirit sighed. His expression was truly sad. I haven't seen any changes. Kahulul, I am telling you now, the competition was intense. It is because it is possible for us to raise our standings. It is a rule that the guides won't change if the participants in the auction don't die. When the third year passed and Randolph Nim continued to show your true worth, a lot of people asked me to change. Then I didn't appear the next year. The dark spirit nodded. That's right. Dubalong couldn't find you in the system. Usually, this only happens when the target is dead. I was saddened. But then, surely, Hyu. His face was like a girl who had fallen in love. I have no regrets about not swapping Randolph Nim. Kahulul, would you like a succubus or elf? A sexual joke. He laughed, Kahulul, at approaching succubi and elves. Just imagining it was terrible. I don't have an answer. Rather, I saw that the fire spirits and water spirits are participating in the individual auctions. What happened? That is? The dark spirit's expression hardened. It wasn't a good expression. I remained silent and the dark spirit continued. Do you know the story about the other spirits sending spies? I know. Due to the summoning of cruel Commander Maxium, the other spirits sent spies to obtain information from the dark spirits. I remembered it. Among them, the water and fire spirits pressed our dark spirits most severely. This time last year, the secret of the Demon World auction was finally revealed. The Dark Spirit King made a deal in exchange for secrecy. Was it to participate in the Demon World auction? No. They showed interest in the system created by the devil. However, we don't know anything about the system either. We just made a deal and the authority was given to us. The devil's system. No one could figure it out. This path hadn't been shown in my previous life. No one had bothered to figure this out. The system itself was already complete. However, the other spirits looked at it from another perspective. Then, once the contract was made, we succeeded in buying some time. Then a few months ago, the other spirit kings decided to participate in the auction. They're limited to the individual auctions, but that was all. I didn't need to know any more of the story. Adonis. He accepted my offer, but what else is he aiming for? It was a question that naturally came up. Adonis wouldn't have made the decision suddenly. The risk was too big for that. He wasn't dumb enough to risk his destruction, just for one essence of origin. He responded to my request because of a separate idea. How many demons are participating? There are 54. Kahulul, it is tragic since only 5 years have passed. In the first 3 years, I was the one who killed all the demons. That number had risen in just 2 years. The average number of points? It was originally 3 million, suddenly, it rose by 700,000 in one day. Kahulul, the dark spirit sent me a sly glance. He had a sense of how many points I had. However, his gaze was filled with respect. And there are contracts for the individual auctions. It will be stamped with the devil's seal, but don't feel burdened. The devil's seal. There were large constraints on its use. Contracts stamped with the devil's seal were absolute. I knew Adonis had it, but I didn't think he would use it. I read through the parchments the dark spirit gave me. Anonymity guaranteed, item protection, confidentiality, etc. were written. The fire spirits and water spirits must have been handed similar contracts. It wasn't strange since they were enemies. I looked at the seal and the place where Adonis's name was written, before biting my finger and placing a bloody imprint on the contract. Immediately afterwards, the parchment was rolled up and passed to the dark spirits. The contract has been completed. Would you show us the items being sold at the individual auctions now? We need to see them before the auction starts. I untied my magic bag. Exactly 10 items. I placed the things I would sell at the individual auctions on the floor. The eyes of the dark spirit shook as he saw the items. An exclamation escaped from his mouth. After this was over, the dark spirit guiding me said, "The involvement of the fire and water spirits means there are changes from the previous years. It was possible to see the items before the auction started, but not anymore. It is for security reasons, so please understand." Then we are proceeding straight to the auction? No. Don't we have to give some time to adjust? You will be given half a day of free time. I frowned. Half a day of freedom seemed simple, but it was actually a serious problem. Demons and the spirits didn't have a good relationship with each other. It was highly unlikely they would ignore each other if there were encounters. It wouldn't be good, as well as, there was enough time if they wanted to do something. So far, there had been no time to do anything. The auction proceeded immediately, and once it was over, I would return to my dungeon. There was minimal time to adapt. From the beginning, the demons were feuding with each other. Unlike my previous life, everything was going much faster. There was a rule that only their creatures could fight, but that didn't apply to the spirits. Furthermore, the act of using Pagan Grioli as a scapegoat for Upa was unprecedented. If they could kill some core people of the opponent's faction, it might be worth it. There must be a lot of confusion. Tisk. I clicked my tongue. In many ways, it seemed like this demon world auction wouldn't be able to progress as normal. Maybe this was what Adonis had been hoping for. Kahulul. Randolph Nim. I need to carry out the auction procedure. Then, I will see you after your free time. The dark spirit opened the door and left. There were some high-class spirits waiting on the other side. My dungeon master. What will we do now? Chrisley roughly grasped the situation. This might be her first time, but she didn't feel awkward. What would you like to do? There were no correct actions. If I didn't move carefully, then there was a high chance of receiving damage. So I asked Chrisley. It wasn't bad to move according to Chrisley's opinion. Chrisley briefly thought for a moment before saying, "This is the conclusion I came to with my current knowledge. First of all, we should get in touch with the spirits." The spirits? Contacting the spirits first. It was surprising. I thought she would want to look at Ariel Diablo's side first. Chrisley cleared her throat and said, "The demons are still unaware of Master's survival. If they know, I'm sure there will be a lot of actions during the next half a day. Especially when it comes to pandemonium. Are you saying we should stay with the spirits so they can't take action?" I was strong. However, there were limits to what I could do alone. I couldn't deal with all the factions alone. Still, I was skeptical. Even if the spirits weren't hostile, they were likely to ignore me if I approached. At that moment, Chrisley confidently declared, "My dungeon master, the blood flowing through my body is very compatible with them. Please leave this to me." The true demonic dragon Aogen and the dark elf Sheila. They had strong attributes of fire and water. There was a chance the spirits could feel an affinity with it. Certainly, it was reasonable. There was no need to refuse. "Okay, I will follow you, but I will choose the side first. My dungeon master, I will follow your words." Chrisley kneeled beside me, 2 feet lengths. In the past, she only walked 3 feet lengths behind me. However, I was satisfied after the training room. So I allowed her to narrow the distance. "We will go to the fire spirits first." "I will follow." Fire spirits. They were sent to an area filled with dark spirits, so they would have high standings. Furthermore, fire spirits had a vigorous and valiant nature. It would be better to speak to them than the water spirits. It wasn't difficult to find the fire spirits. It was enough to go to the place where fire magic power was gathered. The strange thing was that I didn't meet any demons in the huge castle. It seemed like the demons had gathered into their factions after arriving at the Demon World auction. The Grand Dukes aren't idiots. It was clear they wanted to talk to each other about the items they would sell at the auction and develop a plan. I moved as an individual instead of a faction, so I could take one step faster than them. The security is poor. The most suspicious thing was that the security level of the castle was very low. Unlike before, the dark spirits were hardly visible. The spirits of the other elements were inside the castle, so their intention was to stand by. "My dungeon master, is the interior of the castle supposed to be this quiet?" "No, it is quieter than usual." "Why? I feel animosity everywhere." "That's right, I couldn't trust anyone other than Chrisley here." The demons and spirits felt a similar way. Of course, it wasn't just hostility. Soon Chrisley and I arrived at the place where the fire spirits were staying. There was a huge door comparable to the one at the auction. Is this information true? This is an unforgivable problem. Kirpai is the representative. This damn year? I am suspicious of their motives in sending Kirpai. Taking the initiative first. Quiet. A visitor has come. The other side of the door was noisy. It instantly became silent after someone warned them. Keek. I turned the doorknob and opened the door. Then, I witnessed huge flames all over the place. There were 20 existences that could be described as fireballs. Each of them had already reached the high-class level. I felt it before opening the door, so it wasn't surprising. The elite of the elite. They were the fire spirits. Each one could not be looked down on. A power that could turn a situation upside down. The king didn't seem present, but they were certainly his close aides. I might be turned into a fireball when dealing with the fire spirits. In other words, I had to be wary. Did they recognize me? Of course, they didn't notice I was transcendent, but that I was a formidable enemy. The spirits were amazingly hot and sharp. My dungeon master, Chrisley, sought my understanding. She wanted to take a step forward. The fire spirits were already tense after seeing me. Even if I went forward, it wouldn't do much good. Conceding to Chrisley was the right step. I'll allow it. After hearing my words, Chrisley stepped forward and bowed. Fire spirits, my name is Chrisley. We are not your enemies. My flame is more intense than anyone else, and I am seeking your goodwill. An amazing aura. However, the other half is water. No, the fire side is stronger. There was a short exchange of opinions. The fire spirits stared at Chrisley and measured how much fire and water energy she had. Soon the largest fireball in the middle spoke. Child, I know that you have a strong fire aura, but this is too abrupt. Especially when the person behind you is a demon. This is my master. He is a person who is taking a completely different path from the other demons. Master is someone who hunts demons and is the owner of vast knowledge. He will be able to answer your questions. She saw it right away. Chrisley was familiar with some parts of the demon world auction. She managed to identify and use the theme of the transaction. The spirits became noisy once again. A demon hunting other demons? Demons originally hate each other. It is inconsequential. The response was mediocre. This was the attitude of the spirits whenever dealing with demons. Then the leader of the fire spirits said, "What makes you think we want your information and goodwill? I don't mean any disrespect, but I overheard you talking when I was outside. I take it that Kerpai is the name of a water spirit that you are at odds with for some reason. This meeting is because you suddenly received some information upon arriving. I guess that someone gave you information that would make you have a conflict with the water spirits." Chrisley's speech was fluent. Her ability to reason after only listening to a few words of conversation was great. I did well to bring her. Showing her off to Pandemonium wasn't the only reason why I brought Chrisley along. She was quick-witted. I acknowledged that she was a better delegate than me. There was nothing wrong with that. Recruiting great subordinates was also a talent. Bringing her was the correct answer. "Ho, so you can solve our problem? Before that, I would like to hear your story first. If it can be solved, then we will do it." "No, from the beginning you said you came here out of goodwill. If we accept right now, then will it achieve your goal? I'm not the type to shamelessly accept without giving anything in return." Huang. The flames gradually weakened. A moment later, a man appeared in the flames. A man with red hair. His eyes flashed and he opened his mouth. "Okay, I will tell you. Anyway, this is a problem that we can't solve alone." The man looked back. "Everybody take your other forms. These guests aren't enemies." Huang. The 20 fire spirits changed forms. Instead of fireballs, they took the form of men and women who gave off strong impressions. Once all the transformations finished, they sat down at the table. Chrisley was naturally seated on the other side. I was sitting next to her to hear the story as well. The rest of the spirits stared at our side. I'll just say it once. We received information that the Great Fire Essence would unexpectedly appear in the auction. The Great Fire Essence is one of the 9 fires we worship, and was stolen from us thousands of years ago. And we assumed that the water spirits were the culprits who stole one of our 9 fires. This is because the water spirits greatly expanded shortly after the fire was stolen. Yet the stolen item showed up here. That's right, the fire gods will never cease to exist, but 20,000 years have passed already. Little by little, the power will weaken. They intend to sell it here before it loses all its power. Indeed, it is unacceptable behavior. But only demons can contribute to the auction goods. Bah, there is no rule that the water spirits can't cooperate with demons. Just like you and your master coming to us. Maybe you came directly here in order to manipulate us. At first glance, there was nothing wrong with their thoughts. There was a chance that water spirits could form an alliance with a demon in order to sell items at the auction. But it was all without evidence. Even the part about who stole it was just a guess. What was the reason for the water spirits stealing it 20,000 years ago? Maybe it was because they were afraid, but no one could say for sure. The same was true for the second part. It was ridiculous. Chrisley also seemed to notice this. Once you start to suspect your surroundings, there will be no end to the doubts. I want to make one thing clear first. Who told you that information? Dubalong said it. He told us that everything was in place for the sale of the Great Fire Essence. Dubalong. His name came out. I really couldn't trust anyone. Chrisley opened her mouth. Did the water spirits really do it? Why else would they appear here? Chrisley closed her eyes for a moment. She was thinking very hard after hearing the fragmented story. Chrisley frowned and declared, I would like to hear more about the Great Fire Essence. What do you want me to say? It is an eternal flame. One of the 9 sacred flames. To be specific, the Great Fire Essence is in charge of domination. Thanks to this power, the water spirits suddenly expanded their power. Now, have you come to a conclusion? If not, we have to make a decision. We have to take care of the water spirits who tried to deceive us. The man prompted. Chrisley sighed. The information is too fragmented. I need to know the story from the side of the water spirits. Unless you tell me more details, I won't be able to solve it until I meet with the water spirits. Child, I can only tell you up to here. If you want to meet with the water spirits, then I won't stop you. I am certain we are right. There were more worries. After a moment, Chrisley asked cautiously. Perhaps, do you know someone called Arshila? How does a dark elf know that name? It is one of the ancient water spirits. I acknowledge their skills, but they are already gone. They were a close aid to the water spirit king. Chrisley seemed to sense something and nodded. I understand. Then I will go meet with the water spirits. Be warned. If this isn't solved, then it will be a full-scale war. Indeed, the fire spirits. They were vigorous and valiant. My dungeon master. Chrisley got up from the table and said to me. She seemed to want to say something. It would wait until we exited. Sook. A man cried out as I got up. My name is Jives. The fire spirit Jives. His eyes were staring at me. He was looking at me with a strange expression. Jives had also been glancing at me in the middle of the story. It seemed he wanted a confrontation with another powerhouse. Randolph Briggseel. I turned around and ignored him afterwards. After moving a considerable distance from the room, Chrisley spoke. If my thoughts are right, the water spirits aren't the culprits. You seem certain. Yes, it seems to be going in a good direction. Originally I had planned on using my father's name to impress them. True demonic dragon Aogen. A dragon could be called the incarnation of fire, so it wasn't strange to use him against the fire spirits. It would be enough to establish a relationship with them. However, they had a problem and she had a lead to solve it. The Great Fire Essence. Its power is domination, and that won't go away forever. I know someone who owns something similar. I don't know if it is true, but it is very likely if it has shown up at this auction. Who? Pandemonium. Pandemonium? I hadn't expected that name to pop up here. The question naturally formed in my mouth. Wasn't it stolen thousands of years ago? Despite Pandemonium's age, he certainly hasn't lived for that long. Age. He was the oldest among the Grand Dukes. But thousands of years was too long. To be exact, it was just after Okuyo's dungeon collapsed. As his dungeon was falling down, everyone except me turned away. I watched the dungeon while hiding my body. Then one day, I saw Pandemonium arrive and pull out a small fire essence. That doesn't make sense. How is it connected to Okulo's? That's right, the person who is truly connected, Contigonam. Contigonam was king of the Yetis. The name of the one who confronted me. Thanks to the use of corruption, I couldn't remember the last part of my battle with Contigonam. However, I was convinced that I killed him. Chrisley continued while I was still puzzled. Contigonam was king of the Yetis. He stole the sacred fire. As a result, he became king of the Yetis and ruled the continent as king. However, Yetis originally have the water attribute. Arshila is the water spirit contracted with Contigonam. A contract must have been formed in order to use the power of the Great Fire Essence. Then things would fall into place. Talk. I clapped my hands. A contract. There was a contract. But why don't the fire spirits know about Contigonam? The spirits don't pay much attention to the middle world. I wouldn't have known these things if I hadn't read a book about Contigonam written by Oculos. Furthermore, Contigonam only acted for a short time as king of the Yetis. It was only 15 years. He only ruled the continent for a short time. His obsession. After I disappeared, Chrisley tried to investigate the reason behind it. Then she came across the story of Contigonam. Then the Great Fire essence was left behind after Contigonam died and Pandemonium picked it up. My dungeon master. That is my guess. I can make a more accurate judgment after meeting the water spirits. I touched my jaw. I never expected that Contigonam's name would pop up again. But it was strange. My stomach felt weird after hearing the name of the Great Fire essence. Dugan. My heart also jumped. It felt like there was a foreign substance in my stomach. It hadn't happened until now, but hearing Contigonam's name made me feel nauseous. My dungeon master, what is it? Nothing. Let's go. I hadn't eaten anything strange and it wasn't painful. There was nothing that my transcendental body couldn't digest. It might be a mistaken feeling. I had been in many tense situations. It was odd, but I denied it. I shook my head and kept moving. The water spirits firmly denied it. Nobody would willingly admit to criminal actions. In the first place, Chrisley hadn't come here expecting an answer. However, we heard the story of Arshila in more detail. Among them, the water spirit called Kirpai was born from Arshila. Kirpai was a beautiful woman. Similarly to the fire spirits, she had beautiful blue hair. She was wearing an elegant dress made of water. I am a spirit born in the lake. He gave me my name. Chrisley asked about the contract. She wanted to know who had contracted with Arshila. Kirpai shook his head. I don't know. All I remember is that he gave me my name. No matter how long the lifespan of a spirit, there is a limit of 3,000 years. After being born in the lake, I wasn't yet self-sufficient when he gave me the name. The process of a spirit's birth was a little different from that of a fairy. A fairy was born naturally over hundreds of years. However, a spirit was conceived by another spirit giving a specific name to something in nature. Of course, it wasn't just giving a name. A spirit's awareness would only be established after a long time. That point was similar to a fairy. In the end, Kirpai didn't know many details about Arshila. Once Chrisley told them about the possibility of a war with the fire spirits, Kirpai was furious. As they wish. The fire spirits are the ones who stole our sacred artifact. It has already been 20,000 years, but it has shamelessly emerged in this auction. It is unforgivable. There was an overlap of 20,000 years. It also appeared in this auction. Even the person who transmitted the contents was the same. Dubalong. He had met with Kirpai and the water spirits. Just as I was about to leave, Kirpai asked, Demon, what is your name? I feel a great sense of discomfort. I certainly don't remember, but I can feel Arshila. I am very disconcerted for some reason. Water spirits had penetrating eyes. There was a difference between each individual, but they had a reputation for being moderately accurate. Kirpai was a high-class water spirit, so she felt something. Randolph Brigzeal. I answered briefly before closing the door. Anyway, I had heard the stories from both sides. Did you come to a conclusion? I asked after closing the door. I had decided to leave this entirely up to Chrisley and I would follow her opinions. Chrisley replied coolly, the spirits are simpler than I thought. Originally, spirits don't have very good minds. The dark spirits are strange. The dark spirits had an incomparable knack for trickery. In some ways, they were similar to demons. Faithful to their greedy instincts, it was probably why the devil made the auction offer to the dark spirits. It is no wonder that Dubalong is in the middle of this. The spirits know it as well. However, there is no evidence that the dark spirits had anything to do with it. The thefts happened 20,000 years ago. Perhaps Jives and Kirpai stopped thinking at this point. They played a part in increasing the conflict between the two sides. When digging in deep, anger will emerge. The spirits were simple, but that didn't mean they didn't think. However, the relationship between the fire and water spirits was very bad. They both believed the other side stole something sacred from them. It was more desirable to accuse each other than to assume someone else was involved. Emotions ruled over their rationality. The fire and water spirits had natures similar to their elements. It was obvious that they wouldn't stay calm. My dungeon master, we have to choose between water or fire? Chrisley shook her head. The dark spirits, fire spirits or water spirits? Dubalong was confident that the other spirits were dancing to his tune. The results of his work would be revealed. I pondered the benefits and damages that would come from my choices. I could help the dark spirits and urge the water and fire spirits to fight. Once the dark spirits gained an advantage over the others, there was a possibility that the quality and quantity of the items at the auction would improve. On the other hand, what if I revealed the truth to the fire and water spirits in order to drive the dark spirits into a corner? I can gain more points. I was attracted to the latter option. Rather than helping Adonis, I could drive him into a corner instead. Anyway, the Demon World auction was just an additional benefit to me now. The quantity and quality of the goods didn't matter significantly. It was more important to keep an eye on what the demons were buying. On the other hand, the cornered Adonis would be forced to open his hands more earnestly. It wasn't easy to make them collapse due to the devil's protection, but points from the demons were essential to raise the power of the spirits. Adonis was able to face the spirits based on that power. The opponents couldn't oppose him due to the power accumulated so far. In fact, Adonis had dominated most of the spirit world in my previous life. The balance was a little twisted. Even if I took action, he wouldn't be able to go against me. I spent more points than anyone else. An existence that was like a miracle to them. It would be better to tell the truth to the fire and water spirits. The calculations were finished. My heart leaned to one side. Chrisley nodded after I answered. So, we just need to discover the identity of the sellers. If Pandemonium put up the fire essence, we should be able to find out who had the stolen water essence. It is tied up with the devil's contract. It will be difficult to find loopholes. My dungeon master. The demons are the ones who signed the contract. The preparations weren't ready, so the guides were the ones who received the goods. In other words, we can get information from the guide in charge of Pandemonium. If all the preparations were ready, then it would have been impossible. Even the guide wouldn't know the contents. However, the auction had suddenly changed, so there was no time to prepare. So I could move directly. I would aim for the loophole. Is it possible? It was too dangerous, so I had to handle it quietly. I didn't know what would happen if I was noticed. If I tried a direct attack, then it was possible our relationship would turn hostile. Right now, Adonis showed no signs of urgency. He thought everything was moving as he planned. Chrisley said quietly, I have acquired a new power from Ganak, the King of Death. Ganak was a crazy black magician who tried to completely dominate death and darkness. However, his specialty was manipulation. I can manipulate the dark spirits. Although there are some prerequisites. Then it isn't difficult. All the guides will be gathered near the auction display. My dungeon master. The demons are the biggest variable. Won't it become complicated if they get involved? The fire and water spirits were placed far away from the auction location. They must have been placed on the premise that they would fight each other. Thus, there were few dark spirits nearby. In contrast, the demons were close to the center of the castle. Once the demons moved, the dark spirits were likely to become nervous. Becoming a guide could change their status. But I shook my head. No, if there is some confusion, then they won't even notice the guides are gone. Then, we need to know the exact location of the guides before acting. It is a simple matter. It was for me. There was no one who could hide from me in the castle. Chrisley stared into my eyes. There was an infinite amount of trust in her eyes. If my past memories were correct, there was a separate place for the guides to gather. They shared information about the demons they were responsible for and boasted of their accomplishments. And my memory was accurate. He was alive? Dubalong was very confused, but there seemed to be an error in the system. Hiya, I wish. Won't you be promoted next year? The items he is selling are also great. Half-germinated seed of a world tree. Essence of origin. Isn't our king also participating in the auction? Kahuhul. I hid behind a wall and listened to their stories. Most of the guides were gathered here. It was a rule that they needed to be in this place except for guiding their charges at the end and beginning of the auction and emergency situations. This was due to confidentiality. I waited patiently. An uproar would soon happen. The demons wouldn't remain still for half a day. A few hours passed. Kururung. What? Is the castle crumbling? The castle shook. The sound of a violent explosion was heard from close by. Evacuate. Have all guides evacuate immediately. One of the high-class spirits guarding the entrance spoke urgently. As the guides rushed off, I finally moved. I approached quietly like a shadow and snatched Pandemonium's guide. Up, the guide let out a small cry of shock. I quickly took him to a space that no one could see. Chrysley was waiting with a giant crow next to her. Garnak, the king of death. This was his power. Chrysley used her death wand on the guide. The dark spirit who served as Pandemonium's guide seemed spellbound after looking into her eyes. Who is the one that sold the sacred artifact of the water spirits? Ariel, Diablo? He then told me the name and appearance of Ariel, Diablo's guide. Chrysley glanced at me and asked, "My dungeon master. The duration of the stun won't last that long. But he won't remember what happened. It will suffice. Now it is time to grab another one. Please?" The guide had anxious eyes. I answered with a smile. "Chrysley, I will not disappear. I believe you, my dungeon master." I had to move quickly. I needed to take full advantage of this confusion. After 12 hours, the auction started. I moved with the gnome Dark Spirit. Grand Dukes Ariel and Upa were in a fight. Phew, Tilda, it really scared me. I see. Kahulul. Fortunately, it ended amicably, although some demons were seriously injured. The Dark Spirit guided me. Soon after reaching the auction place, I saw familiar people were standing in front of it. Huh? The Dark Spirit was confused. He couldn't understand why those people were waiting at the entrance. In fact, the fire and water spirits weren't looking at each other. It was strange because they couldn't readily move. However, his question was broken after a moment. It was because they discovered me almost simultaneously. Randolph Briggseel. I was waiting. Let's go together. Jives. He'll be with us. The fire spirit Jives. And the water spirit Kirpai. The two competing groups were looking at me. I moved ahead of the dark spirit and stood in the center. The reason for this? It was simple. The truth was revealed. For reference, there was nothing as powerful as the truth to move someone. I didn't know it in my previous life, but I realized that truth in this one. And Jives and Kirpai instinctively saw me as their only savior in this castle full of dark spirits. A demon who walked a completely different path and cleared the darkness planned by the dark spirits. The whereabouts of their sacred items, that was another type of transaction. A relationship will develop if I obtain the items for them. The scope of the work increased. At first, it was a fight between demons, but now it had spread to the spirit world. When thinking about the interference of the angels, I might not be able to deal with things alone. I needed allies. They would be the arms and legs that would move on my behalf. I targeted the fire and water spirits. They were a perfect match against the dark spirits and didn't have a deep relationship with demons. Anyway, my points were large enough. I didn't know how much my points would rise through the individual auctions. But I was confident people would be interested in my auction goods. In particular, some would cause a fervor. I looked at the closed door of the auction. On the other side of the huge doors, Ariel, Upa and Pandemonium. I smiled. In a mountain without hunters, they are fighting over territory. But now there was a hunter. If the real thing was revealed, what would be their reaction? Would they believe in their strength and bare their teeth, or would they hide their bodies? Keek. I pushed open the door. At the same time, a bright light welcomed me. The 4 halls on the 2nd floor. Ariel, Upa, Pandemonium and Adonis each occupied one. Adonis was sitting in Okuyo's original place, but that had become vacant after he died. It was surprising that some of Okuyo's demons could be seen. It seemed like they had all been absorbed by Pandemonium. Even though I killed 4 of his demons, he had more subordinates than other factions. Ariel had 15. Upa's faction had 18. Meanwhile Pandemonium had 20. Including me, there were 54 demons gathered in this place. It seems like the balance has been destroyed after Okuyo's death. Pandemonium had the most people, but 7 among them originally belonged to Okulos. Okulos had died after using soul assimilation, but it seemed like the effect was less than I thought. At any rate, I was somewhat surprised by Pandemonium's quick response. I didn't think he would absorb the power as soon as Okulos died. No, they felt like dolls that he was controlling. It wasn't impossible for Pandemonium, who was familiar with magic. But his eyes were currently watching me with shock. That wasn't all. Ariel and Upa were the same. They hadn't expected me to show up at the Demon World auction. Everyone thought I was dead. Dubalong had announced it, yet I returned. Of course, I wasn't the same as before. My strength couldn't be compared. I had reached the domain of transcendence, but they weren't at that level yet. Their growth was remarkable compared to their previous lives, but they were still inferior to me. I ignored their gazes and sat down in the central hall on the first floor. It was the place where I had sat alone in the first, second and third years. All the other demons were seated on the second floor. However, now I had the fire and water spirits beside me. It was natural that I would stand out in their midst. Randolph Brigzeal, Ariel Diablo. Her voice could be heard. At first she was confused, but now she was watching me with intense interest. I wasn't emitting magic power, but Ariel had unusually keen eyes. She realized that I had transcended or something similar. The strong curiosity of the other demons couldn't match hers. Right now, she was more focused on me than the auction. I glanced at her. My mouth was in a thin line. Relaxation. Now I could confidently feel on the same level as them. In the past, I always felt something lacking, but now I had broken through the limits. We were equal in all respects. I used mind's eye to look at Ariel's status window. Name: Ariel Diablo. Occupation: Demon Grand Duke, Dungeon Master. Title: Asterisk Devil's Descendant. Epic: Magic Power +10. Asterisk Weapons Master. Epic: All Stats +3. Asterisk Victorious over Chaos. Epic: Strength, Agility and Stamina +6. Asterisk Path of a Ruler. XU, Strength and Magic Power +4. Stats: Strength 84, +15, Intelligence 92, +3. Agility 89, +11, Stamina 85, +11. Magic Power 87, +17. Potential: 437 +57 500ths. Uniqueness: one of the 4 Grand Dukes. Governor of Underhill and was the master of 18 demons. She realized chaos and started to walk along the path of a true ruler. Skill: Weapon Cheat, Epic, Abyss Sword, Epic, Power of Words, XU, Waterspout, Epic, King's Blessing, Epic. Skill and Item Effects: Rain Sword, Strength, Agility, Stamina +2. Before and after comparison: Strength 75, Intelligence 76, Agility 81, Stamina 73, Magic 87, Potential 372 +25 hundredths. Strength 99, Intelligence 95, Agility 100, Stamina 96, Magic 104, Potential 437 +57 500ths. It was a growth that couldn't be compared to when I first saw her at the Demon World auction. Her total stats were 494 points and the strongest sword technique, Abyss Sword, was completed. In my previous life, Ariel didn't have such growth in the first 5 years. It was a testament to the fact that things were moving as quickly as possible. However, it was insufficient. When it only came to stats, I was superior. The effect of her skills couldn't exceed the insurmountable wall of transcendence. My growth was also more excellent. Upa had a different reaction. My emergence was utterly unexpected. His eyebrows narrowed at the thought. Unlike Ariel, he couldn't grasp the truth about me. Pandemonium. He was staring at me. He was convinced I was the reason behind his demons disappearing. However, he couldn't move carelessly due to the alliance of humans and the Giran. It was too late for him to regret it now. I was well prepared before coming here. The levels are similar. I gazed at the statuses of the Grand Dukes using mind's eye and they were all similar. The differences came in the titles, skills and items. In terms of power, Ariel Diablo was superior. Tisk. A sound was suddenly heard. The Dark Spirit King Adonis. He clicked his tongue like he was disgruntled. He had been hoping that the water and fire spirits would fight each other. There were no signs of fighting, so he was very disappointed. Some doubts filled his eyes as he gazed at me. There was no evidence, so he just watched. Hello. Dubalong is glad to be with you on this auspicious occasion. Quack. The curtains parted and Dubalong emerged in clown makeup. He looked around with a wide smile. The auction rules have changed. There are also unfamiliar faces. Additionally, someone who was thought dead has come back alive. Randolph Brigzeal Nim. I responded by briefly shaking my head. He is really sly. I had contacted him, but Dubalong showed no signs of previous knowledge. His acting ability was one of the best. I think everyone knows that the rules have changed. Guests, it is time to sell the items. Dubalong is very excited to see what type of items there will be. I was also curious about this part. The individual auctions had meaning for the other demons. It was a chance to fill their missing points before the auction began. Disposing of the items they didn't need, there was a possibility there would be mines. For example, a cursed item. Some demons had simple observation skills that couldn't penetrate through some cursed items. There could be skills that would only be triggered under certain conditions or tracking spells on the items. Some demons were confident of being able to track the sold items. Therefore, the demons had to decide carefully before buying. Dubalong spoke slowly. Bidding for the items is simple. Each person will call out a higher number of points. If you don't have the points that you bid, the girls and boys on the ceiling will ridicule you. Please don't try if you don't have the required amount. I knew the process, but it needed to be explained to the participating spirits. The auction hall fell silent and Dubalong spread his arms out wide. All the guests, I greet you once again. It is nice to see you. If you have an item you want to buy, the spirits will pay with their rank. The system will then assign them points. A confident smile. The plan to make them fight didn't work, but the fire and water spirits gathered here were strong. Only the elite were present. It would still benefit the dark spirits if they could reduce their rank. Dubalong. Now their role is just a folding screen. I would make the purchases. The fire and water spirits were just playing a role for me. I wondered about the magic of their artifacts. That alone was worth an alliance with them. In many ways, the plan of the dark spirits was being wasted. Now, you should be filled with expectations. Let's start the auction. We will proceed in 2 parts because there are many things. There will be a 1-hour recess in the middle. Jack. Dubalong clapped and the workers brought out the first item. A large stone statue. It was in the form of a gargoyle. It is something surprising. The magic power that can be felt is unusual. A delicate statue of a gargoyle. The soul of the artist can be felt along with the magic power. The starting bid is 50,000 points. Name. Delicate gargoyle statue. Description. A sculpture carved with the power of a sculptor. It is full of vitality like the gargoyle could come alive. Asterisk the reproduction rate of all gargoyles within a 10 km radius will increase by 15%. Asterisk cursed by the artist. The moment it is owned, magic power will be reduced by 1. Indeed, there was no way normal things would be sold through this route. It was in order to earn points. 50,000. There was an exquisite option hidden. Demons with general observation skills were forced to go fishing. The starting price was cheap and items related to reproductive rate were rare. Marquis Hamacham Nim, 100,000. Earl Seal Nim. The price rose, but I wasn't caught by it. After a few more bids, it came to a stop. It has been sold to Earl Puram Nim for 300,000 points. Congratulations. I watched the process silently with arms folded. The item wasn't good enough to use as a decoy. I just watched. After that, a few more items appeared. They were normal things with almost no problems. They weren't that good. The items were literally just any that were grabbed in order to be sold. Angela's pot, power shoes, etc. came out, but I didn't lift my hand even once. I wasn't waiting for such things. The atmosphere finally changed as the 20th auction item appeared. The item being sold this time is great. Don't be surprised. The Great Fire Essence. An eternal flame. An item that will give absolute power of domination. I will show it right now. A vein in Dubalong's neck pulsed as he swallowed. The workers brought out a big cage. It contained the Great Fire Essence. A great fire. A strange magic power. The demons started to get excited. Oh, one of our 9 gods. The strength is fading away, but it is still burning. The fire spirits were also excited. However, I couldn't participate in their actions. Is that a fire? They called it a fire. The Great Fire Essence seemed completely different to my eyes. It looks like a 2-legged dragon. The appearance seemed to be a cross between a dragon and a 2-legged animal. I used mind's eye. It was due to my curiosity about the dragon. Name. The Great Fire Essence. Description. One of the 9 fires. It burns forever and has the power of domination. The description was too short. The name was no different. But that wasn't all. Mind's eye couldn't see the rating, which meant there was a seal or other reasons behind it. Growing. The dragon opened its eyes. At the same time, I felt a burning pain in my stomach. It felt like something different was inside me. I frowned as I stared at the dragon. Who are you? This was certainly the first time I saw it. I didn't know the dragon. Nevertheless, it felt somewhat familiar to me. Gurung. The fire essence snorted and grabbed the iron bars. Then fire soared from its body. But that was all. They were burnt, but the iron bars couldn't be removed. It pretended to be strong but was very weak. Our essence. You, open that cage right now. The fire spirits rose from their seats like they were going to fight. Some of them were prepared to fight in the form of fireballs. The high-class spirits were filled with fury. They would burn the castle down without leaving any dust. The dark spirits weren't that powerful, but they didn't react. Dubalong responded like he had expected it to some extent. Please wait a moment. The dark spirits don't want any confusion in the auction house. This is an auction item, and it will be handed over to the final bidder. The spirits could use their rank, or a contract, to pay the price. For example, Dubalong sent a sly smile towards Jives. The fire spirit Jives. He stared at Dubalong with a menacing expression. In the case of the fire spirits, Jives is a rank 4 figure, so it wouldn't be impossible for him to gain millions of points. Or you can procure those points through a contract with someone here. That person could be a dark spirit or a demon. But Dubalong was very confident. If they formed a contract, they were highly likely to do it with the dark spirits. The spirits were likely to use a contract. Dubalong thought they would never make an agreement with the demons here. So please buy it. This is the auction house. There are items great to look at, powerful creatures, etc. This is a place to buy and sell everything. Those with more points will buy better goods, and those who don't will end up losing. We provide equal opportunities for everyone. Dubalong finished his short speech. So far, they had just been listening. The gap between each person wasn't equal, but no one deliberately challenged him. They had already agreed by entering this place. No two demons were the same, and the spirits required contracts. They heard in advance how much points they could get through their rank, or a contract. We will proceed with the auction again. The Great Fire Essence, one of the 9 fire gods with the power of domination. There are many parts that haven't been revealed yet. Starting at 5 million points. The demons had an average of 3 million points. That fact that it was so high meant they didn't want to sell it to demons at all. It was for the fire spirits. Do you want to buy it? Then this is the price. Or contract with us. Either way, it would benefit the dark spirits. The power of the spirits would be reduced, or they would enter into contracts that could set up several strategies. Dubalong and Adonis had satisfied smiles on their faces. They were saying, you can't buy it. 5 million points. It came out. 5 million points. Randolph Briggseel Nim. His voice trailed off. He stared at me. I knew that he was slightly frowning. I had touched a nerve since my appearance with the other spirits. However, Dubalong, there are no eternal allies. From the beginning, I had worked for my own benefits. The deal with Dubalong to preview auction items in advance was beneficial. I also had something to gain from the fire and water spirits. I didn't think of it as betrayal. A game for the final winner. My past experience showed that there were no eternal enemies or friends. It all changed depending on the situation. Besides, I also had a personal interest. I want to know your true identity. The others just called it fire. But for me, it had an entirely different meaning. I felt something from the moment I saw the dragon. Something inside me was telling me to catch it. 5 million points. Is there any more? 6 million. Ariel Diablo Nim. Once again, the spirits didn't participate. Ariel Diablo. The Grand Duke was also eyeing the fire essence. It was a bold choice. However, that wasn't her only unconventional action. Talk. She sat on my side on the second floor. The demons in her faction were looking at her with astonishment. They alternated between staring at Ariel and I. Upa and Pandemonium were sneering. But they weren't laughing. They had guarded expressions. They didn't know why I appeared, but I was a completely different person from the past. In particular, Pandemonium felt like he was sitting on a thorny cushion. He was aware that I had killed Okulos. There was no other person who could do it except for me. But while I was gone, Pandemonium attacked my dungeon. It was like a declaration of war. After penetrating to the center of my dungeon, he was an enemy that I could never ally with. A force he couldn't know. The Grand Dukes knew each other after fighting for hundreds of years, but I was different. If I angrily joined with Upa or Ariel, then Pandemonium was in for a tough fight. His actions had come back to bite him in the feet. What is she doing? I was wondering about her actions. Ariel was an unpredictable Grand Duke. She was very fickle. Elle couldn't read any intentions for her to come to my side. I believed that Ariel wouldn't budge. She shamelessly stared at me and spoke. Randolph Brigzeal, how do you feel about sitting with me? It is unpleasant. Haha, that's right, me too. Randolph Brigzeal, you are really an unpleasant man. I didn't know what to say. I turned and glanced at Dubalong. It was a sign telling him to proceed with the auction. But Ariel spoke faster. I am the direct heir to the devil and one of the Grand Dukes of the demon world. I came into my position at an early age and ruled. I've never had anything that hasn't gone my way. I've always had the privilege of walking a clean road. I frowned. What do you want to say? Ariel smirked. You are different every time you appear at the demon world auction. There is a confident attitude towards everything. However, an invisible wall existed between you and the Grand Dukes. So everyone didn't think much of you. You might have realized it yourself. But this time is different. Ariel's eyes turned to me. There was an unlimited curiosity shining in her eyes. This time you crossed the wall. I congratulate you for crossing the wall and reaching this position. Sook. Ariel rose from her seat. She glanced around the second floor. Okulos has died. We have fought against him for hundreds of years. However, his death wasn't related to us. Are you convinced by these results? She was asking Upa and Pandemonium. She wanted them to admit that their enemy died in a way unrelated to them. There was no answer, but Upa and Pandemonium seemed uncomfortable. Everyone realized that I was the perpetrator. I acknowledge Randolph Brigzeal as the new 4th Grand Duke. He has enough to fight us and has come to this place through his own strength. The pioneer of a new path. We should pay homage to that pioneer. Out of nowhere, I was at a loss for words. It was natural. Ariel Diablo was fickle, but gaining her recognition wasn't easy. She never admitted anyone as equal to her. She was even scornful of the other Grand Dukes. It was natural since only she could claim legitimacy. But Ariel turned her head back towards me. Randolph Brigzeal, from now on, you are my enemy. Quote, that's right. This moment would cause an irreversible hostile relationship between Ariel and I. It had been a rule for hundreds of years that no Grand Dukes would ally with each other. In other words, there was no one on my side. I admit it. Pandemonium. He admitted it as soon as he realized. Ariel, Pandemonium, have you gone mad? Upa was the only one to argue. But Ariel and Pandemonium stayed firm. Even the system decided against Upa. Impossible achievement. The recognition of a Grand Duke has been received for the first time. The Grand Duke is an absolute existence. A number of demons have received recognition from them in the history of the demon world. Now that the devil is gone, the Grand Dukes will recognize those who meet their standards. The status window will change from Earl to Grand Duke. It is now possible to appoint a Dungeon Master for your empty dungeons. The Dungeon Master has the same rights as a demon and can participate in the Demon World auction. 6 million PT will be paid. 5,000 achievement points will be added. I formed a fist. I wanted to hit them in the same place. My dream was to become the devil. Now I was one step closer to that dream. I was strong alone, but there was a big difference in being recognized by them. I was given legitimacy. It seems like the system created by the devil has acknowledged you as a Grand Duke. Ariel Diablo seemed genuinely happy. She was satisfied that a strong opponent had emerged. Took. Then she sat down again. I didn't know why she wanted to recognize me as an opponent, but I decided to ignore it for the moment. Host. Today is a happy day. But aren't we here for a reason? Dubalong regained his spirit. Ah, congratulations. Then, the auction will resume. Ariel Diablo Nim has called out 6 million points. Any more bids? 7 million. Randolph Brigzeal Nim. Have you been collecting points for 2 years? How great. Baduk. I heard a brief sound as I called out 7 million. It seemed like Ariel didn't like it. Even though she was just smiling a moment ago, her mood had easily changed. I really can't tell. I inwardly shook my head. Ariel Diablo was proving to be the most difficult Grand Duke to deal with. Furthermore, I was amazed that she had 6 million points. Due to the above system messages, I was able to speculate that Grand Dukes received more points, but it was still a great number. An average of 3 million. What percentage of the total did Ariel have? 8 million. However, Ariel didn't stop there. The boy and girl statues on the ceiling weren't laughing. 8 million, that was certainly quite a large sum. Did she determine the value of the Great Fire Essence? In fact, even I was dubious. I hadn't made a contract with the fire spirits, so I didn't need to obtain the item. Now I was sincerely thinking about it. Would I bid more or stop here? The fire spirits were well aware of how much 7 million points was. In the first place, they never intended to buy anything with their rank. They showed their intentions. If the fire spirits approached me now, then it would be really funny. If they wanted it, they would either have to sell their own rank or sign a contract. There were no other methods. They couldn't eat freely without making any efforts. If they clung to the idea that I would obtain the essence for them, then it was likely to just be a surface alliance. I wanted to see the sincerity of the fire spirits. I shrugged. I shook my head towards Jives. The action was stating, "It is up to here." Of course, it wasn't actually the case. Ariel Diablo's eyes had seen something more than I could imagine. I also felt a sense of attraction to it. There were plenty of reasons to buy the Great Fire Essence. Jives noticed the meaning of my look. It was followed by an earnest stare. He was asking, "Can't you afford any more?" Tisk. I clicked my tongue. I could, but I wasn't going to just pour it all in. My expression hardened. Grand Duke Ariel Nim has called out 8 million points. Is there anyone else? Great Fire Essence is one of the 9 fires of the fire spirits. It is unexpected that the fire spirits wouldn't make any bids. I will now count to 5. Dubalong sneered at the fire spirits. The dismissive tone showed that the item would go to someone else if they continued to sit still. Jives' frown became deeper. He had learned about Dubalong's plan due to me, so he was angry at the dark spirits. His words weren't wrong, so I became more impatient. "What are you going to do, Jives?" I took a leisurely stance. My crossed legs and raised chin showed a casualness about the situation. Jives was conflicted as he glanced between Dubalong and I. He only had 2 options. Sell his rank or sign a contract. 5, 4, 3, 2. Jives shouted just as Dubalong was about to say, 1. Form a contract. I am the fire spirit Jives. Dubalong's smile widened. It is worth more if Jives is the one signing the contract. But it should be more than 8 million points. It will be difficult if there is no one in this room. Dubalong sneaked a peek at Adonis. Adonis was probably the one with the most points to spare. The Dark Spirit King, head of the Demon World auction. The points that had piled up in 4 years were significant. The other Grand Dukes had a lot of points, but it wasn't easy for Jives to ask them. However, Jives pointed at me and said, "Randolph Brigzeal, I will contract with you." Certainly, he has shown a remarkable appearance at the auction. But the law states that consent is required from both parties. Randolph Brigzeal, do you agree to a contract with Jives? A contribution of 8 million points. It was a large burden. The auction hadn't even started yet and a lot of points had already been consumed. I had to move carefully. However, I inwardly smiled. The fire spirit Jives. The contract with him wouldn't end simply. It was an opportunity to gain an opening with the fire spirits. In addition, I might be able to receive some unexplored achievements. This wasn't a loss. I will contract. A contract has been formed with the high-class fire spirit, Jives. This contract is complete only when the user purchases the Great Fire Essence. The right to use Jives will depend on the number of points spent on purchasing the Great Fire Essence. A message window came up at the same time. In short, I could use Jives depending on the points I spent. So how many points would you like to call? Ariel Diablo bid 8 million points. The proper amount for the following bid was 9 million. 15 million. 15 million, are you sure? Dubalong was shocked. I nodded. 15 million points. It was almost double. The reason was simple. The higher the price was, the stronger my contract with Jives became. My plan was to overturn the plate. 15 million points was a worthy investment if I could reliably use the fire spirits. Jives was a rank 4 medium fire spirit. He had other spirits moving under him. Grand Duke Randolph Nim has bid 15 million points. Are there any more bids? There was no chance. By the way, Grand Duke Randolph Nim. It feels good. I started laughing. Although the situation was confusing since I suddenly became a Grand Duke, Dubalong had great skills as a host. "Aren't you being greedy, Randolph Briggseal?" Ariel spoke sarcastically. I didn't even turn my head. We weren't close enough to observe each other and there was no point in being honest. No one spoke. "Congratulations. Grand Duke Randolph Nim has won the Great Fire Essence." Dubalong sneaked a peek at me. He was skeptical at first but now he was certain. I had a deal with the other spirits. He can't move without confirmation. Then this happened. I didn't violate any of the rules so he couldn't drive me out of the auction house. Even if they did have conclusive evidence to move, my points were too precious. Weakness. That was my purpose. Jives looked at me and bowed humbly. It was his way of saying thanks. He can thank me later. I intended to thoroughly use him. That's why I had invest 15 million points. All that remained to be seen was if he could keep up with the gratitude. Dubalong opened his mouth with a slightly tense expression. "The next item to be sold is the Essence of Origin." Then, I couldn't help smirking. Finally, the time I had been waiting for had arrived. Now it was time to retrieve some points. 15 million, 16 million, 17 million, 20 million. The Essence of Origin has been awarded to Adonis. Even if Dubalong didn't explain the Essence of Origin, all the demons had observation skills. There were no hidden options so the demons instantly wanted to buy the essence. It was an item that would allow them to break through the limit. Everyone knew the value of it. The Grand Dukes followed closely to around 10 million, where it became a battle between Adonis and I. Adonis had a lot of points that the Grand Dukes couldn't match. Adonis had no choice but to bid, despite knowing I was intentionally raising the price. As a result, the Essence of Origin was sold for the overwhelming amount of 20 million. Minus 20 million PT will be paid. The contract was effective immediately so I received the value of the item straight away. Quadaduke. The sound of teeth grinding could be heard in the auction house. Adonis was the source. He looked at me like I was a traitor, but I didn't care. Anyway, he had impure intentions when he approached me in the beginning. We used each other for different purposes so there was no point feeling betrayal now. No, it wasn't even a betrayal. One winner. The rest of the people in the game are losers. Doesn't Adonis know that the difference between winning and losing is who strikes first? There were no eternal allies. It would be better for me to step forward first. As the auction continued, the Hyacinth's bow emerged. That is it, the sacred artifact that we lost. Kirpai told me. In addition, she started the contract herself. After Jive's case, she calculated that I wouldn't easily buy it. It was a wise judgment. A contract with the high-class water spirit Kirpai has been formed. This contract is complete only when the user purchases the Hyacinth's bow. The right to use Kirpai will depend on the number of points spent on purchasing the Hyacinth's bow. The auction didn't heat up like before. It seemed likely to finish at 7 million, but I just laughed. 15 million. All the points would be recovered anyway. The fire and water spirits seemed to mistake this as friendship, but it was an illusion of freedom. Slow Sword, Epic, was a skill book that I bought at the achievements store. A sword with a lazy name. It was a slow and frustrating sword technique. Even so, it had an epic rating. Although there was no guarantee because the rating was high and it was below High and Moon's swordsmanship, but I was sure that Ariel Diablo would purchase it. Ariel was interested in weapon techniques. Her desire to learn was very big. And it was like I expected. Minus 3,500,000 PT will be paid. My method, I placed items that I knew the demons, especially the Grand Dukes, would want to buy. They were things that stimulated the imagination. Both skills and creatures were sold. They were unaware that the goods they bought came from me. If they knew then they would have refused to buy them. Thanks to that, I had over 50 million points. 50 million? Originally I had 40 million and I spent 30 million to buy the Great Fire Essence and Hyacinth's bow. I received 20 million for the Essence of Origin and another 20 million for the other items. At least 6 million points were acquired from each Grand Duke. On the other hand, the demons were forced to use more points in the individual auctions than they thought. The points seemed to be focused on some demons. I was alone but they weren't my match when it came to points. The individual auctions are over. Then we will enter the auction house after 2 hours. The deadline for the individual actions came to an end. Dubalong bowed and the light illuminating the auction house disappeared. The individual auctions were finished. The fire and water spirits could only participate up to here. They needed to return and report about the auction experience. Will the auction items be sent back to the dungeon? Before that, I will report to the king first. Randolph Briggseel, I will be sure to tell the king your name. We have a contract, so if you call my name, I will show up wherever you are. Jives told me excitedly. For the first time, they hadn't suffered under the dark spirits. They were now on the verge of reclaiming their god lost 20,000 years ago. I'm not sure what the Fire Spirit King will choose, but he wouldn't stay still. The Demon World auction and points. Their rank could be raised or lowered as a result. A significant number of goods were sold to the demons, so it didn't make sense to stay calm. Using the dark spirits or becoming hostile towards them, the latter seemed more likely. And the dark spirits knew it. The dark spirits' original purpose had failed. The path won't be flat. I spoke honestly. Jives gave a small laugh and said, I came to this place with the elite troops. We were prepared to attack at any moment, and the fire spirits won't be easily beaten in an all-out war. Even if they attack us, there is a sea of hope. You seem confident. Jives shrugged. All the fire spirits present were high class. This power was enough to get away from the dark spirits. Jives looked at me and declared, now I will call you Contractor. Contractor, as soon as the great fire essence is given to us, our contract will become fully formed. The Fire Spirit King will be pleased. I will make sure that Contractor's name will be provided. This isn't a small thing. It was important that the Fire Spirit King took my name seriously. It meant he might give special help. A favor outside the contract was what I wanted. It would properly overturn the plates. Hopefully, it is doable. I laughed. It wasn't simple to gain merits in the spirit world. I planned to cause massive changes on Earth. For example, what would happen if a fire or water spirit contracted with a human? The strength of the humans would drastically increase. The spirits were strong. In my previous life, there were few humans who knew how to handle their power. However, it wouldn't be difficult if there was a contract. It was my job to contact the Spirit Kings and make it possible. If I can do it, it would be beneficial if I could increase the power of humans. I had a different status and the help of the Giran. Jives and the fire spirits bowed to me before turning away. It was safer to go with the water spirits, but it seemed like they were still stubborn about the bad relationship between them. After they retreated, Kirpai and the water spirits came towards me. Randolph Nim, congratulations once again on your promotion to Grand Duke. Kirpai's hair waved in the wind as she gave a cheerful smile. We will be in a complete contract soon. It has been 500 years since I got a new contractor. I will wait to meet you again. It is possible if you don't die. I wasn't saying this to myself. I was talking to Kirpai. The fire spirits had a confident attitude, but the plan of the dark spirits was broken, so I couldn't see what type of action would be taken. I had read their intentions through the auction and knew that they wanted to reduce the strength of the other spirits here. There was a chance there might be an attack on the way back. Kirpai didn't lose her smile despite my words. Contractor Nim, water spirits are a calm lake, but we can also be a rough sea. I will keep the bow if you die. I will be sure to return alive. Kirpai had no choice but to be strong due to the hyacinth's bow. The fact that the situation was dangerous was a reasonable conclusion. If Jives or Kirpai died, then my 30 million points would have flown away. Therefore, it was necessary to hold the items as collateral. Then I will go now. If I talk to you for too long, then bad people might gather. I nodded. Kirpai laughed while covering her mouth and left the auction house. My dungeon master. The warehouse is open. Do you want to see it? Chrisley, who was walking next to me, asked. Warehouse. It was a place where we could preview the items to be auctioned off. Is it open to the public? I just heard about it. Chrisley also didn't know the details. Should I look at it? The fire spirits and water spirits. A considerable number of people would have been needed to catch both at the same time. The interior of the castle wasn't empty. It was likely that the demons wandering around would become witnesses. The chance for a perfect crime would vanish. It would be the worst-case situation for the dark spirits. From here onwards, I have to trust their talents. Right now, I was walking on a rope between two cliffs. If I got more deeply involved, then I would fall. And this auction was important. There was a gap of 1 year, so I couldn't miss it. I made a decision and said, let's go to the warehouse. I wondered how much better the quality of the auction items had become after 2 years. I had seen a high-class 2LV Titan, so it wouldn't be strange if there were better items and creatures. There aren't that many goods, I muttered. There weren't 100 items being displayed. There were only 50. It felt like a pretext. Starting from last year, they are only showing half of it. Ariel Diablo approached me. Why? Let's see? Are they trying to be mysterious? There could be lots of reasons. They didn't show everything. It was to cause frustration. I felt an intense curiosity towards the invisible auction items. It is a type of teaser. This was a strategy. I couldn't complain because the dark spirits were the ones providing the goods. Randolph Brigzeal, I'm looking forward to seeing a great show this time, Ariel said casually. I briefly replied, the greater your expectations, the greater the disappointment. What did you say? The greater the expectations, the greater the disappointment. However, I think that you will match my expectations. Ariel thought for a moment before shaking her head. Ariel seemed to be anticipating the results. She had superior eyes and the ability to see future paths. There are many creatures. I stopped paying attention to Ariel and looked around the warehouse. Overall, there was a lot of high-ranking creatures. Personal power was important, but the power of the dungeon was also critical. The dark spirits had captured this part well. Gulpin, Titan. The best ones are high-class 2LV creatures. The two of them seemed the best. It wasn't bad, but was it still too early for high-class 3LV creatures? Or maybe it was intentionally hidden. Randolph Brigzeal, isn't it disappointing? But when looking at last year's auction, it is likely they're holding back. So don't be disappointed. Ariel continued staying by my side. On the other side, Chisley was looking uncomfortable, but Ariel didn't budge. She stayed even when one of her subordinates approached her. I don't know her intentions. I inwardly sighed. Ariel Diablo. She could be a really difficult opponent. 2 hours after the individual auctions were over, the main auction began. The interior of the castle was quieter than usual, so it seemed like a large number of dark spirits had left. Jives. Kerpai. I hope you don't disappoint me. If they couldn't escape the dark spirits, then I was stupid to spend 15 million on a contract with them. If my eyes were correct, they would be able to leave without difficulty. My dungeon master. Sit here. Chrisley guided me towards a seat. Ariel, who had been stuck to me like gum, finally moved to the second floor. Chrisley, have you been paying attention? Yes. I remember the faces of those who will become master's enemies. What do you think? One thing is for certain. Chrisley turned and looked at the second floor. I am stronger than the majority of demons gathered here. It was exactly what I saw. Chrisley had objectively judged how strong she was. Everybody in the area could hear it. It was a type of taunt. That dark elf feels no fear. Bah, they remembered her. Chrisley was the dark elf bought along with Krasla in the first year. But they didn't come forward directly. I couldn't tell whether it was because of the spirits, Ariel Diablo, or my new status, but I could feel many eyes watching me. In addition, Chrisley had blatantly opened her magic power. I didn't try to restrain her attitude. Her growth was amazing compared to the first time I saw her. The people who wanted to buy Krasla and Chrisley felt a pain in their stomachs. Their expressions were rotten. Quack. I looked at the front and Dubalong soon appeared through the curtain. Hello once again. Dubalong will be overseeing part 2 of this auction. It is less humid because there are no fire and water spirits. Dubalong sent me a slight glance like he was joking. I stared at him with an intense, expressionless face. Dubalong feigned ignorance and continued talking. Did you enjoy the time off? Now, I will introduce the first one. This is the real thing. An unmatched creature. The king of serpents with 9 heads, the Hydra. My gaze became stronger at those words. Hydra. Did the dark spirits really catch it? Hadn't it only been 5 years? The very first item was absolutely unbelievable. Hydra? It is the first time I've heard that name. However, the demons had different attitudes. I would have been unfamiliar with the name if it wasn't for my past experience. A mythical creature that appeared in ancient literature. Originally it had been sealed. The dark spirits were the ones who woke it up. But the timing was too early. It was only the 5th year, so the demons would find it very difficult to deal with. No, in the first place, the dark spirits needed the approval of the high-class creatures to form a contract. I was skeptical about how they could form 9 different contracts. They shouldn't have accumulated enough knowledge yet. Did they make some progress? It is because of Mago? It was possible. Mago was unstable due to the contract and often ran wild. She destroyed everything around her until she was tired. If the knowledge of the Hydra from my memories was correct, the only demons who could handle it were the Grand Dukes. It would overwhelm those who lacked the ability. Achacha, thanks to its size, it can't enter the auction house, so I beg for your understanding. Instead, I'll show you through the crystal ball. Soon workers appeared with a huge crystal ball. The crystal ball showed an image of the creature that was supposed to be the Hydra. But it wasn't just the Hydra. The Hydra was a creature with 9 heads. Different types of breath attacks poured from each head. Thousands of orcs were being crushed by the Hydra. It trampled on them and caused devastation. Nothing could stop it. Kwau, fire, water, lightning, poison, etc. poured out and slaughtered the orcs. That wasn't even mentioning its size. It seemed like a moving mountain. It was rare to see something that size. It was completely larger than the advanced golems. The demons instantly paid attention. It was an overwhelming sight and everyone forgot to swallow their saliva. Dubalong smiled as he saw it. The Red Feather is an orc tribe. They are in charge of a village on the outskirts of the demon world and on par with an intermediate creature. In particular, the orc lord of the Red Feather tribe is 2 levels higher than a normal lord. But, look, the crystal ball showed the next scene. The orc lord appeared. He was twice as big as a normal lord and started to wield a greatsword. He didn't avoid a breath attack that hit it and was barely damaged. Instead, the orc lord is holding a magic sword. It is an Esalal blade that absorbs magic power. Depending on the user's abilities, the options are amplified and it can be possible to reverse the breath. The sword will come out in this auction, so please pay a lot of attention to it. Dubalong's short description was over. The video showing had already changed to the fight. The Esalal blade appearing at the auction meant it was the Hydra's victory. After a few breath attacks, the orc lord reached the Hydra. But the huge body of the Hydra itself was a weapon. The ground shook and the orc lord stumbled. However, he leapt without hesitation and cut off one of the Hydra's heads. The orc lord was momentarily elated as the head fell to the ground. Yet the cut-off head was instant restored. Before he knew it, a breath was once again coming from its mouth. It was a bizarre scene that made the demons feel greedy. The 9 heads of the Hydra needs to be destroyed at the same time in order to kill it. Or it would grow back in the blink of an eye. The orc lord didn't know how to cope. And those who didn't know the method would never be able to kill the Hydra. Cheek. The video ended here. How was it? Don't you feel greedy? Even the finest high-class creature can't match the fury of the Hydra. That's right. The other creatures couldn't reach the Hydra when it came to pure destructive power. Not only did it have a huge size, it could subject the enemy to 9 different types of breath attacks. Any demon would feel greedy. If they had to buy one high-class creature, it should be the Hydra. This was true even if there was no information about it. The problem is, I felt some insecurity about the contract. If the Hydra was really being sold, then I would buy it. Whether it would follow me or not was a separate matter. If the Hydra didn't recognize its owner and attacked, not many demons could stop it. Dubalong bowed his head humbly. I have just introduced the legendary creature. It will start at 5 million points. No more words were necessary.